evening, everyone. I'm Margaret Perot, the President and CEO of the Batavia Chamber of Commerce. As the pandemic continues to impact our business community, the Batavia Chamber is working hard to support our chamber members, our businesses in our town. Through advocacy, education, and building a network of support, the Chamber promotes an environment for local businesses to survive and even thrive in this current economy. As an organization whose mission is to advocate for businesses and economic development, the Batavia Chamber has a special interest in knowing what is going on in government. The Batavia Chamber has 450 business members and approximately 1,500 representatives. But more importantly, the Chamber is made up of citizens who live and work in this area. This is our home, and our members want to know who their elected officials are and where they stand on issues that affect us all. The Batavia Chamber is pleased to co-sponsor the Candidates Forum tonight with the League of Women's Voters because we want to keep our community informed now, during a crisis, and for the future. We will all benefit from an open exchange of information and ideas. The Chamber is happy to help maximize this awareness. I want to thank all the candidates here tonight for participating. I want to thank BATV for live streaming and thank those who are tuning in tonight. I would like to express my gratitude to the League of Women Voters for arranging this event and partnering with the Batavia Chamber. Now I'd like to introduce Patty Lockman, the Voter Service Chair of the League of Women Voters. Patty is an active and valued member of the Batavia Chamber of Commerce and has worked diligently to bring this evening together. Patty will start tonight's program. Thank you, Patty.
Thank you, Margaret. Good evening, candidates and audience. And I want to introduce also Marianne Nass, who is our timekeeper tonight. We also have Lona Steele and Kelly Rotola, who are out ushering people in between the races. We also have Amelia with BATV. Would like to thank her for her coverage. Tonight's forum will cover the candidates in the contested races for Kane County Board Districts 10, 12, 14, and 18, which fall within the geographic area of the Central Kane County League of Women Voters. We also will have the Kane County State's Attorney's candidates at the conclusion of the 4 County Board District forums. Contested races are when someone has a direct opponent on the particular ballot. I want to tell you a little bit about the League. We are a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation of citizens in government. We never endorse a candidate. The League of Women Voters sponsors events such as this one so that voters are educated and informed on where their representatives and the candidates stand on issues. This is done in an open, unbiased setting, and tonight with no audience. The League has very strict rules about how to conduct such events, which we will go into a little bit. We will have questions that have come in from the community. They have come in a variety of different ways from a variety of different sources, including local PTOs and churches and other community organizations. And I will say that we have reviewed the questions for appropriateness and clarity, and I will be the moderator tonight, so I will ask the questions. I was not scheduled to be the moderator tonight. However, the moderator that we had scheduled had a little scare with COVID, and so we said, thank you very much. We'll take it from here. So the candidates will each get a minute to respond to the question after doing a 2-minute opening telling us about their candidacy. In the event that I feel that the question requires more than a minute, I will let them know. And Marianne Nass will be holding up the stop signs at 30 seconds and a stop sign at the conclusion of your comment, or when your comment is supposed to be concluded. I will let you finish your sentence, but please let's not go on for another paragraph. So with no further ado, I would like to have the 2 candidates for Kane County Board District 10 give their opening statements, and we have done this for the opening in alphabetical order, and then we will flip-flop back and forth, so no one gets to answer all questions first or last. So, Mr. Brown.
Well, thank you, and good evening. My name is David Brown, and I am running on the November 3rd election to represent the citizens of Kane County District 10. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and also the Chamber for hosting this event tonight. I do realize how difficult it's been for you to plan for this and stay within the CDC guidelines, so I appreciate all your effort. I'm a sixth-generation Batavian, and I am married to my wife, Marge. We have lived on the west side of Batavia now for 33 years, where we have raised our 5 children. I am running for the Kane County Board position because I believe the citizens of Batavia and North Aurora should be represented by someone who has experience and the available time to represent them. I have recently retired from my 49 years in the construction industry, where I learned how to work in the trenches and advance myself to management of a large commercial construction company. I also have the experience of having been a small business owner in the residential land development and owner of a ready-mix concrete construction company. From 1997 to 2019, I was fortunate to be elected to represent the 7th Ward of Batavia and sit on the Batavia City Council. During that time, I was on the Public Utility, Public Safety, and Community Development Committees. I was the chairman of the Community Development Committee for approximately 4 years before the council went to the Committee of the Whole structure. At that time, I was appointed the chairman of that Committee of the Whole. As a prior business owner, heavy equipment operator, manager, city council alderman, I needed to be goal-oriented, budget-minded, proactive, and resourceful. I will bring these skills to the county board, which will allow me to represent the citizens of District 10 and all of Kane County. As an alderman, I work cooperatively with the members of the city council to provide a balanced budget and establish one of the lowest tax rates in the area. At the same time, I volunteered for many area activities, such as the most recently highly successful Batavia Boardwalk Shops. I pledge to represent the citizens of District 10 in the same manner, and I thank you for your interest tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Ms. Krantz.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the Batavia Chamber of Commerce and the League of Women Voters for inviting me tonight. It really is a pleasure and an honor to be here. I have to say, never in a million years would I have imagined myself running for public office. But, like a lot of people, I've been increasingly frustrated by the negativity of political discourse in recent years, the lack of respect for marginalized groups, and the decline in access for many Americans to basic needs such as healthcare and education. So when I was approached about running for this office, I realized I could either continue to complain or I could try to make a difference. Public policy should reflect the needs and values of the people it serves. And so I commit to District 10 voters to learn what matters most to you, to our great community, and to work to make our policies and budgets reflect those values. I want to hear from you. Just a little bit about me. I live in North Aurora with my husband, Dan, in the home where we raised our 2 adult daughters. I've been an educator and community leader in one form or another for most of my adult life. I'm currently on staff at Canelan High School, where I work with students across the learning spectrum. When my daughters attended Rosary High School, I served as president, vice president, and chairwoman of the school's Parents Auxiliary. I'm proud of my accomplishments in these roles, and I feel that they have prepared me to be an effective leader for Kane County's District 10. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Krantz. And now we'll go to question number 1, and we'll start with Ms. Krantz. What is the importance of the Kane County Board to the residents in your district?
I find in speaking with people when I was able to, that many people don't know what the county board does and where it is distinguished from Batavia or North Aurora and Kane County. So I think one thing that needs to be done is, of course, they're concerned about the taxes, But I think one thing that needs to be done is we need to get our faces out there. We need to get more information out there about how the county can help you with what services and when you should come to them.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, like Ms. Kranz, when I was out walking, as she said, when we were able to, which was during the primary, before the primary, I heard the same thing from many of the people that I talked to. What is it that the county does do? And I think some of the highlights of what the county board is responsible for are the many different areas, the different departments of the county, which most importantly, I think, are right now the health department. The health department has become very, very busy with this COVID epidemic that we have going on. And then we've got the Kane County Sheriff under the county board. Now, he's an elected official, but we still have to all work together and provide a budget for him. And then in his department, he's obviously dealing all the time with the opioid addiction and mental health issues. You've got transportation, you've got forest preserve, you've got public safety. My goodness, there's just all kinds of judicial services and stuff that the county's responsible for, that people that live within a municipality don't really realize is available and is going on. Thank you.
Okay, on that same note, how do you feel Kane County is handling the COVID-19 pandemic, starting with Mr. Brown?
I think they're doing very well. The health department is a phenomenal health department. They've been very much on top of things. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to attend the meetings. I know some people can attend, but it's encouraged that if you have pertinent business there. So I've been listening in on all the meetings. And the committee that the board has set up to deal with the COVID and the distribution of the funds has been working tirelessly and many, many hours to figure out how to handle these funds that we received from the CARES Act. And the health department, like I said, they've been way overworked, and that's something that I'm sure is going to come up in the future. And I think the county's been doing a very good job of handling the COVID.
Thank you. Ms. Kranz?
Well, I'd have to agree with Mr. Brown that I do agree. I think the health department is doing the best they can. We are all in such a position right now that we've never been in our lives. And so we're going to make mistakes. People need to just try their best, and that's what they're doing. Nobody wants to be here. I do have a problem with the CARES Act money, the $92 million that was given to King County to be used by the end of the year. I feel in the beginning it was not, there wasn't a proper committee set up to help get it out there to the people, and I think that needs to be done faster.
Thank you. Many questions on COVID tonight. This next one, starting with Ms. Kranz, do you think that the county has been transparent in sharing information about the impact of COVID on the public in Kane County?
I think that they have been, as far as testing and as far as, where it's happening, what they're doing as far as schools and businesses go. But as I just said, I feel that in the beginning when this money was given to us, I don't think that there was a proper committee I think there should have been people from the municipalities, from businesses on that committee to give their 2 cents as to, what should be done with that money. And I think it could have been distributed a little bit sooner.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
Could you ask the question again, please?
Do you think that the county has been transparent in sharing information about the impact of COVID-19 with the public in Kane County?
Yes, I do. I believe the county health department's done a great job, along with the county board and the county chairman, to be transparent in what's really going on in the county.
Thank you. Due to COVID-19, what are your recommended spending priorities, including revenue opportunities and spending cuts? Mr. Brown?
My priorities due to the COVID-19, obviously budget is a huge one. I just read in the paper today, and I was listening to the meeting the other day about what Sheriff Ron Haynes is doing as far as early retirement in order to try to get what reduce the budget, his budget in the upcoming years the best he can by encouraging early retirement, and that seems to be working very well. So I forget the exact number, but it's I think it was over $1.5 million in savings that we're going to realize out of the sheriff's budget due to his efforts. And I know the other departments are working on seeing what they can do as well. So those are the things, my priorities, to be exact, would be to work with the department heads and the other elected officials to get a balanced budget and still try to provide the best way of living that we can for our residents.
Thank you. Ms. Kranz?
I think that what we need to do, and I'd really have to, be involved in the board to understand wherever all the different, where the budgets are being put. But I think we need to get people back to their livelihoods, to their businesses. And I think we need to do everything we can to get that money out to them so that they can start working or they can put their children in daycare, especially with not being able to go to schools. People need to be able, they need relief. And I think that's twofold if you're able to open the businesses with the daycare also.
Thank you. Starting with Ms. Kranz. What qualifications do you have to assist managing Kane County's annual budget?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Excuse me. What qualifications do you have to assist in managing Kane County's annual budget?
Okay, thank you. I run a household. I had 2 children that went to Catholic high schools, that went to college. I needed to budget every cent. Granted, it's on a much grander scale with the district, with the county. But I am a very shrewd business person. I look for the best. I'm frugal. I'm not afraid to ask for something, especially if it's real and I truly believe in it. So I think I can be on there and find the good deals and ways to budget.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
I think my qualifications would come from not only being a small business owner and having to deal with the everyday monetary issues. You got to pay your bills, you got to pay your payroll, you have to keep people, you have to make people happy and such. But most importantly, I think my 22 years on the city council would really be a benefit for the county board. I sat on all the different committees and chaired a couple different ones. And we always had to be money conscious. We always had to think about the wants and the needs. We always had to look at what the money was that was available. And we had to, just constantly look into the future. We had to have vision. We had to realize that we had to keep reserves for rainy days, as we just saw come up with COVID. We could certainly call that a rainy day, and certainly reserves are something that's very important that over the years has been talked about at the council level, where do we really need this much of a reserve? Well, you really do. So you have to plan ahead and you have to be conservative.
Thank you. What needs to be done to respond to environmental concerns for water and climate change? Mr. Brown?
What needs to be done for environmental change? Well, I think the more we can switch over to electric vehicles is certainly an important thing. I know the county is on track to get to that goal at some point in time, but certainly that's something I would push for, more electric vehicles. As far as water goes, there's certainly a soil erosion plan that's out in place that could always be looked at again. Water quality, conservation is very important. I know we're mining more water out of our aquifers than what is being produced. So if we don't start paying attention to what we're doing, and this has been a conversation that's been going on as long as I can remember, that we're going to have an issue. And Lake Michigan water really isn't an opportunity for us out here in Batavia and North Aurora. So the aquifers are a tremendous asset that we have, and we have to protect them. And that's something I'll have to try to work with the rest of the county board on.
Thank you. Ms. Kranz?
Can I say ditto? I'm kidding. I have to agree pretty much with most of what Mr. Brown said. I think that we need education out there too for the citizens, and to know what about the water levy, and about even with simple recycling. I think there's not enough push for it. There's not enough incentive for it. So I would have to say a dead fast. I think we need education, more education about it.
Thank you. Starting with Ms. Kranz, what would you do to advance racial justice at the local level? Can you give me some specific steps?
That's a very difficult question. I think that we need to have a lot more, again, education, which is one of my major platforms, with public officials. I think with workers, retail workers. I think in schools. I think there needs to be a lot more unity. I think we just need to be educated on it.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
I agree. Education is obviously important, but treating each other equally is just where it has to start. And it starts at the top. It starts at the very high level of the White House, and it comes all the way down to this level and down all the way into the township level and into your household. We have to treat each other equally. We're all one, and we can all get through this mess we're in if we all try to realize that we are all just one and we're all the same.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, if elected, what particular standing committees are of interest to you?
Transportation is very much of interest to me. I think maybe administration is of interest. I'm very much looking forward to, if I were to be elected, that I'd be on the Forest Preserve board, which every member on the county board is on that, but that is something that, the Forest Preserve and the parks and the walking trails and all that are very much something I'm very interested in. I was very involved in the River Walk around Batavia here, and my family, going back to when my father was mayor and Phil Elstrom was the county board chairman, were very involved in the river trails all the way up and down the Fox River. So I do have a passion for parks and recreation, but the major committees, I think, would be transportation and administration.
Thank you. Ms. Kranz?
My number one would be mental health. I think, especially given our current situation, that it is becoming more and more of a problem, that people are not getting their proper services for that. I think also, that being said, working towards the judicial side of that, where I think sometimes addicts or people with mental health issues are put in jail when they should be receiving services instead. I'd also agree with Mr. Brown with the transportation. I think that we really need people to be able to get to places and to services. And the people that can't drive, we should have the PACE buses in downtown Batavia, in North Aurora, not just going down Randall Road.
Thank you. Ms. Kranz, what does the board need to do now to prepare for the possibility of civil unrest and looting, should it occur anywhere in Kane County?
Well, I think it starts with the Sheriff's Department, and I have total faith in Sheriff Hain. I think he has really brought a lot to Kane County with his treating people as humans and as people. I think there needs to be training at every level. I think although the board does not handle schools, I think it needs to be all the way down to the school levels of letting people know how to react in these situations. And I think we need to be transparent in what is going on and try to avoid as much as we can with proper barriers and information from the public, to be open to the public to give us the information about what's going on.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
You know, as I mentioned a little while ago, everything starts at the top. And just as you try to raise your kids the best you can based on the way you act and react around your house, I think what the board could do in this circumstances would be to work together, cooperate. You know, it's okay to disagree. It's okay to have your opinions. But at the end of the day, you need to show the public that we can all work on these issues, whatever the issues are. One at a time, we can work on them and we can get them done and we can go home and we can be friendly with each other. And that needs to be transposed out into the public, that we're all working together to make things better. And beyond that, I think we just really need to support our public safety officials. And they're the experts. We need to listen to them and we need to support them.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, what steps would you take to decrease the partisanship of the county board?
Well, I feel like I don't know what I could tell you as far as what steps I would take, but I can tell you that I believe in cooperation. I believe that I was on the city council here in Batavia as long as I was, and I was appointed chairman to the different committees because I cooperated and because I could get people around me to work and cooperate together. So getting on the county board, that is something that I would take to the county board. That is something I feel like I could bring and I could share, and cooperation. It's talking. She's my opponent right here tonight, but I'm going to tell you, I think she's a very nice gal, and I think she would do a very good job if she were to be elected. We have to cooperate.
Thank you. Ms. Kranz.
Thank you. I may be on the Democratic ticket for this position for Kane County Board, but I am here to serve everyone in District 10. And I believe that a lot of people's egos and a lot of their political influence tends to taint the way that they vote or the things that they do. And I am not that way. I'm here for everyone. I have no ties to anyone politically as far as favors. And I think that I would be completely open to talk to anybody and make my judgment from there.
Thank you. If elected, what is something in particular that you want to accomplish on the county board?
Is that me?
Yes, Ms. Kranz.
Okay. I would like to have some better mental health facilities and services for everyone, and also make sure that we are servicing all people in the community, including our people with disabilities. It's a big thing in my life. I grew up with a sister with a disability, so I see a lot more than I think a lot of people see. And I think there's so much that we can be doing for services for people with the mental health issue, physical health issues, and also addicts. And I think we need to be paying more attention to that. I think it can make us all come together better.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
Thank you. One of the issues that I could bring up right off the bat would be the intersection of Route 31 and Batavia Avenue. That's a intersection there that we have had way too many accidents and way too many fatalities, and it's a state intersection under state control, but the county's involved, and so anything to get done there would have to be done with the county taking the lead. I understand that they are working on it. They've gone through the phase 1 study, but with the budget being what the budget looks like it may be, I think unless we have somebody on the board that is really pushing to make sure we get improvements there, that could fall off the wayside. So that intersection would be very important to me. Transportation, again, PACE buses going through where there's high-density housing, and working with the city of North Aurora, village of North Aurora, and the city of Batavia to try to get some bus routes, and working with PACE to try to get some bus routes to go in where there could be some higher-density housing. I think the whole landscape of all the retail and the housing is all going to change in a few years, so that is something we have to work together on to make that better so we can get more people onto the PACE buses. The sale of the jail property. Oh, I'm sorry.
Ms. Kranz?
I already answered.
I'm sorry.
I already answered the question.
Is there anything you would like to say to an undecided voter?
I think that if you're looking for a person who is not a career politician, who is here for everyone, who will be here to listen, you'll know my name, you'll see my face. I'm always going to be there for people, and I think I will do the best that I can for you. And I think you should choose me. I'll be the best candidate.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
I'd like to diddle that one. I'm not a career politician. As I have said before, I'm a normal citizen that just wants to do the right thing for his area. And in this case, my area is District 10. So I will be available. As I mentioned, I've retired, so I can put my full time into this. And I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to go to the village boards of North Aurora and Batavia and see what we can do to make things better. And I don't have anybody that I owe anything to, so I'm running on the Republican ticket, but I'm running as an individual.
Thank you. And because I screwed the last one up, we're going to have Ms. Kranz do her closing first.
Okay. Well, again, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and the Batavia Chamber of Commerce for this incredible opportunity. I'd also like to thank the viewers who are watching tonight. It's more important than ever to pay attention to local elections and, of course, to vote, which I know you all will. So thank you for tuning in. I want each of you watching me to know that I am truly and genuinely not in this election for myself. I'm running for my family and for you and your families. Because as I said earlier, public policy should reflect the needs and the values of the people it serves. My belief in the power of individuals to make meaningful change is deep, and my commitment is strong. I've tried to live a life that reflects that commitment. I'm a lifelong advocate for people with physical, mental, and emotional disabilities. I'm working to improve accessibility to education, employment, and housing for all. I've volunteered at the Aurora Food Pantry, Feed My Starving Children, Hesed House, and PADS of Aurora. Kane County has been my home for more than 25 years. I appreciate all that is good about it. And with your support in November, I promise to make it even better. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
Thank you. And again, I want to thank BATV and the League of Women Voters and the Chamber and the residents that are home tonight watching, taking time out of their day to become more informed. I think that's very important, so thank you to all. Having lived here all my life, I understand the past and the present. If elected, I will have a positive impact on the future. We need a representative who understands our values and has vision and can work in a professional, workmanship-like manner and cooperate with others. As your Kane County Board member, I will listen to what my constituents have to say. I will be willing to meet with the public officials of North Aurora and Batavia and address how the county and these municipalities can accomplish more together. I will cooperate with my fellow elected officials and the professional staff of the county on all matters throughout the entire county to provide the best quality of life while maintaining a lowest tax base possible. I am sure you have heard many times that this upcoming election in November is the most important election in modern times. I would like to encourage you to vote in every election. Local elections directly affect your daily lives, and locally elected officials are more available for you to voice your concerns with. So whether you vote by mail, vote in person early, or vote in person on election day, please get out and vote. And I would appreciate your vote, so vote for Dave Brown to represent you on Kane County Board District 10. Thank you.
Thank you. And now there are 4 of us in the room, so we can applaud. And we are going to thank you, candidates. We're going to take a short break while we switch to the next Kane County Board District. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When? Ready? And now we're ready to start with the candidates for District 18. And so I will have Drew Fraz and Sandy Kazmarski give their opening statements, 2 minutes apiece. Mr. Fraz, please go first.
Hi, my name is Drew Fraz. I'm running for re-election of the Kane County Board, representing District 18 as a Republican. I'm a lifelong area resident and a 42-year business owner in the local area. I currently serve on the Kane County Board Executive Committee. I'm a senior member of the Development Committee. I'm chairman of the Transportation Committee for the last 8 years, and I have served as vice chairman of the board for 4 years during my terms. I'm currently serving on the special committee that's distributing $93 million in coronavirus relief funds from the federal government. And these will be going out very shortly in the next week or two to local governments, businesses, and not-for-profits. In the above positions, I can get things done for District 18, which is one of the busiest county boards in the county. I'm proud to be able to work across the table and across the aisle to my friends that are Democrats, and I work very closely with them, and I have their respect, and the same goes the other way. I'm actively involved in the management of the Mill Creek community, which is a unique responsibility for District 18. Mill Creek is the largest unincorporated community in the county, and it has a special SSA group, which is like a residents association, and we have an $800,000 budget, and I attend all those meetings and supervise the county employees over there. What I'm really proud of countywide is Kane County's financial statistics are rock solid. We have a AA+ credit rating, which equates to low interest rates when we borrow money. We have frozen the county's portion of the tax levy for the last 8 years. We've balanced our budget for the last 8 years. We reduced debt by 80%, and our pensions are 90% funded. And we have an award-winning transparency throughout all county departments. The Republican Party has provided solid county management across the board, and our statistics prove it. Vote for a proven winning team. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Kazmarski.
I wanted to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this. As always, it's very important to have educated voters. That's always a plus. I'm Sandy Kazmarski. I'm running for Kane County Board, District 18. I am a 16-year Elburn resident. I have a bachelor's degree in journalism that I got from Roosevelt University, and I currently work as a communications consultant, and I work with environmental nonprofits. I worked for a number of years as a radio news anchor in Chicago. I worked as a journalist and editor and reporter at many of the local news outlets, covering a lot of government meetings and writing about them. I also worked at the Forest Preserve District of DuPage County in their communications department, and so I know what it's like to be a county worker, and I have to deal with county boards. I decided to run for this office because I've witnessed, particularly the last 8 years under the current board leadership, a lot of disruption, and I would like to bring back civility. And I feel that there's been too much partisan politics going on, and we do need to work across the aisle and work together so that we can make decisions together for the future of Kane County. Some of the areas that I want to work on are finding new sources of revenue to try and keep our taxes down. The environment, of course, is very important for me, and finding renewable resources and continuing to find uses for solar energy and making sure that our government buildings are energy efficient. As a board member, as an elected official, I should say, I would expect no special favors, and just really look forward to working with the residents and working towards the future.
Thank you. And now we'll go to question 1, and we'll start with Ms. Kazmarski. What is the importance of the Kane County Board to residents in your district?
Well, as with any area, our local government is extremely important. A lot of times people overlook that, I think, even when they go to the polls and they look at the larger races. And, you know, a county board is right in our backyards and our communities as far as the issues that are dealt with. You are a lot closer to you know, your neighbors in resolving issues and making sure that your tax dollars are spent well. You know, we're talking about education and our roads and a lot of other issues that come up too, and trying to spend well our local tax dollars and also supporting local businesses and our schools. So, you know, county board is extremely important and is really the closest thing, part of government, you know, with the residents.
Mr. Froz?
Same question?
Yes.
Yeah, District 18 is what would be considered a rural district. There's currently 24 districts in the county. They're divided by roughly 25,000 population groups. And good or bad, what happens is we have, for example, some very small districts in Aurora that are entirely in the city limits and have no county highways. And then we have some districts out to the west that are gigantic in area. And for example, District 18 covers the communities of Caneville, Elburn, Maple Park, and as I said, the unincorporated community of Mill Creek. All those communities need help from the county. So the county plays a much bigger role out in the rural areas than it does in the urban areas that have their own governments. And as I mentioned, Mill Creek is unique, and I'm essentially the de facto mayor of Mill Creek and have to attend all those meetings and attend to everything from cracks in the sidewalks to dead trees and everything in between. So it's very important in the rural district.
Thank you. Starting with Mr. Froz. How do you feel Kane County is handling the COVID-19 pandemic?
I'm very proud of it. The bulk of the burden of the COVID-19 fell on our health department. Barb Jespers is our director, and she's done an outstanding job. She's working 24/7 in dealing with that, and we couldn't be happier with her. And Sheriff Hain, who's our Democratic sheriff, who's actually endorsing me, has taken on several special projects. Our jail has a no COVID record, which is amazing. And I think they've performed magnificently, in my opinion. And as I said, we received $93 million from the federal government. I'm on the committee to distribute that to our local governmental agencies, townships, fire districts, and then we're going to start open next week a small business support group. And sadly, as of today, we've had 318 deaths in Kane County. We want to keep that to a minimum. Fortunately, there's a 99% chance that you won't get it or you won't be symptomatic. I personally favor opening schools, but it's been a big challenge, and we're up to that challenge.
Ms. Kazmarsky, same question.
I think Kane County has really done an exemplary job of dealing with it. Unfortunately, I've experienced in the last few months some family illnesses, so we've spent some time over at Del Nor Hospital, but every time we're there, I do talk with the nurses and doctors and ask them how it's going, and they are doing a tremendous job in isolating people and treating people. And while fortunately, you know, the statistics are still, you know, not too bad, there are a lot of people getting very sick, and there are still some deaths, and we have to really take that seriously. I think that the task force is finally on the right track. I think they had a rocky start, but they have, with this new commission, and I know that Mr. Froz is on there, is doing a much better job. And as he said, the funds are starting to be dispersed. They have till December 31st to get rid of $92 million, but I think the effort is to really get the money out there to support the people in our community.
Thank you. On that same note, starting with Ms. Kazmarsky, do you believe that Kane County has been transparent in sharing information about the impact of COVID-19 with the public in Kane County?
Yes, I do. I think for the most part, they have. I know that there was some controversy earlier with our current board chairman in wanting to withhold some of the figures from the coroner's office, which really isn't right, but those figures are still available if people look at them. And it's a difficult thing because the numbers can always be manipulated. But I think the county has been very good about keeping track of things. As I said, I've talked to a lot of people over at the hospitals, and they are doing an exemplary job in reporting, what they need to. And, it's important that people know what's going on. As a former journalist, I think people have the right to know, and that's one of the things with our government. They do have a right to know everything. And I feel for the most part that the county's done pretty well. The county website has a lot of information there as well.
Mr. Fries?
Yeah, I would agree completely. I'm very proud of our response to COVID and the transparency therefore. You can look in the papers every single day and see an up-to-date count, and even down to where those deaths are, as they seem to be unfortunately concentrated in retirement centers. But at Kane County Connects, you can look at that anytime, not only for COVID information, but for just about anything there is to know about Kane County. And if we talk about transparency later, I'll mention Kane County Connects again. Kane County Connects is our daily on-site, online newsletter, and they publish all the COVID information in there, so it's never more than 24 hours old.
Thank you. On the same vein of COVID-19, Mr. Fries, what are your recommended spending priorities due to COVID-19? Revenue opportunities, spending cuts? Some examples.
I'm not sure I understand the question. I mean, we are.
What are your recommended spending priorities due to the COVID-19?
So the county received $93 million. We're keeping 55% of that for what's called in-house spending on COVID. So that will cover a majority of our expenses. So we're working through that right now. We're just about completed with the requests that were made by the various departments that covered expenses for COVID. For example, we're upgrading air circulation. We're making it so our courts can function, automatic temperature taking as people walk in the door, those sort of things. So our department heads, who are just top of the line, have made their requests, and we've pretty much approved the majority of them at this point. So that's where we're spending the money. And of course, the cities will be able to make their own decisions with their 45% that we're sending to the cities, townships, and not-for-profits.
Ms. Kaczmarek, Marsky.
Kaczmarski. I would agree with that. Small businesses really need help. I mean, there isn't anyone in any corner of this county or the country that hasn't been affected by this. But certainly our businesses, if they can keep going and that people can continue to, service them. Any of the senior groups, community health agencies, food banks. I mean, there's been such an overwhelming need in every area that we really have to be sensitive to that and certainly committed to that. I think Kane County again is doing a pretty good job of that, and I hope to continue that.
Thank you. Ms. Kaczmarski, what qualifications do you have to assist in managing Kane County's annual budget?
Well, as I mentioned, I worked at the Forest Preserve District of DuPage County, and our budget was a lot less when I was there, but I managed our department and worked with the county board and was involved in the budget process with that. I just feel that, working with everybody together and identifying, what needs to be addressed, that we need to do, a good job of meeting those needs and deciding together where, funding needs to go.
Thank you. Mr. Fraz. What qualifications do you have to assist in managing Kane County's annual budget?
Well, I've done it 13 times. I would say the one thing that's a little bit unique, I came on the board in 2008, just as the Great Recession was kicking off. And so we went through the entire Great Recession, and, it didn't end very soon. It trickled on in our budget for quite a while. And then just as things were starting to look good, we rolled right into the COVID situation. So we've been working on a shoestring, which is a good thing. We've been very frugal. If you go look at our facilities, our county board building, the government center down there is a repurposed 1940s era boarding high school, and we meet in essentially a former church. So we've been very frugal across the board. Every year we have a budget deficit that we have to work through, and by November we always work through it, and we ask our department heads to tell us the difference between their needs and their wants, and that's usually what ends up happening, and we balance the budget every year for 13 years.
Thank you. What more needs to be done to respond to environmental concerns for water and climate change? Mr. Fraz.
Mr. Fraz? Well, as a Kane County Forest Preserve, Kane County board member, you are automatically a member of the Forest Preserve. It's a little bit unique. We're actually one of the only counties in the state that is both the county board, the Forest Preserve, and the health board. So we all serve on the Forest Preserve board, and we're up to about 21,000 acres that we've preserved. A substantial amount of that is in District 18. And I'm just working on a deal right now to preserve about a mile of Mill Creek, which includes the Blanding turtle, which is a endangered species. And we're looking at all our buildings, which my opponent mentioned is one of her goals. We've done environmental audits of all our buildings, put in LED lighting, improved circulation and HVAC systems. So we're operating very efficiently at this point.
Ms. Kazmarski.
Well, again, this is an area that's near and dear to my heart. Kane County voters have repeatedly shown their overwhelming support for open space and the environment in Kane County, and they've done so by passing 4 or 5 referenda in the last 20 years, even in difficult economic times, to support efforts to protect our environment here. I know that the IDNR had appropriated some money for dam removal. That's one area that I would like to see in working with the environmentalists. I do that the dams really do a lot of damage and can do a great deal to improve water quality by their removal to their natural state. And, that, like I said, it's just, the Forest Preserve District has grown tremendously, and I'm always very pleased that we have such support from the county.
Thank you. What would you do to advance racial justice at the local level? Ms. Kazmarski, give me some specific steps.
Oh, boy, specific steps. I don't know. It's a difficult question. It's a difficult question because if you look at Kane County, it is somewhat segregated. When I was on the Rotary Club in Geneva, that was one of the things we talked about all the time, of wanting to encourage more diversity and stuff. And when you have the populations, when there are more diverse populations like up in Elgin and then south in Aurora, and in between, the percentages out where I live, I would love to see more diversity and more inclusion. There's been some reports that came out that parks in underprivileged areas were less served, than in other areas. I think Kane County overall, the forest preserves are available for everyone, and our parks and our river. But Specifically, I've gone to meetings and seminars on diversity and what do we do, and I wish there was some real specific answer, but boy, I sure would love to have more inclusivity here, very much so.
Mr. Fraz.
I'm glad you got that one first.
Yeah, thanks.
No, not to make light of it, but the District 18, just by its rural agricultural nature, isn't a very diverse district. So I'll talk in terms of county-wide responsibilities. We're responsible to our district, but we also make votes and decisions on things county-wide, including Aurora and Elgin and everywhere in between. And personally, I'm a big believer that a good economy with high employment is the best thing you can do to make life better for everybody. The old saying, a rising tide raises all boats. And we've seen that pre-COVID, and it was working really good. And I'm hoping that our business grants that will be going out in a week or so are going to save a lot of small businesses and keep people employed. And when people are employed, they spend money, and it trickles down throughout our entire economy. So that's what I would do.
Starting with Mr. Fraz, if elected, what particular standing committees are of interest to you and why?
It's kind of fun on the board because every board member that comes along has different strengths. For example, we have two board members that one recently retired, but he had a insurance agency. We have another one who is currently runs a big insurance agency. So they tend to gravitate towards the human services committees and so forth like that. I personally always tell people I'm a bricks and mortar guy. I spent 41 years in construction. So I'm the 8-year transportation chairman. I can talk the talk with the engineers. We build roads, we build buildings. So I'm on the administration committee, the transportation committee, and I'm also really proud that I initiated the move to build the new, what people are calling the coroner's office. It's technically a multi-use building, about a $14 million project that I initiated from the start and brought it to construction where we're at right now. So again, I'm good at bricks and mortar things, and that's where I like to be. And development I would include in that.
Ms. Kosmarski.
I would really be interested in serving on any of them, but I think a few of the committees that Mr. Fraz mentioned, the Development Committee, there's still a lot more to be done, and I would like to have a voice on there to make sure that things are sensitive to the environment, any kind of development. And I, of course, District 18 is fairly rural. I have an acre and a half. And, we can grow better and bigger without impacting the environment. There are ways of doing it. Transportation, I think, because that's one thing, with a lot of rural areas too. And I know in the long-range plans, they've addressed some things. So, that would be an area that I'd be really interested in being a part of, and also probably human services. But anything, I'm willing to step up to the plate for anything that I can contribute to effectively.
Thank you. Ms. Kosmarski, what does the board need to do now to prepare for the possibility of civil unrest and looting should it occur anywhere in Kane County?
Well, I think our sheriff's department has done an exemplary job in just in training and in responding to any potential threats that there might be. I know a few months ago there was some concern with some rioting, and I know that there were some measures taken by a lot of the businesses to board up and so forth. I think to put faith in our sheriff's department, and Sheriff Hain has done a great job. And, a lot of these things, I think not overreacting. I think sometimes that just kind of exacerbates things. But fortunately, our county so far, we've been able to have a few protests that I've been to, and they've all been peaceful, and they've just been exercising our First Amendment rights.
Mr. Fraz.
Yeah, Sheriff Hain is new to the county, and he is just doing a fantastic job. I think he's respected by the entire county board. And they responded to various riots, I guess I would call them, in Aurora, and I know they responded over to Naperville, and the guys performed well. And the new building I mentioned is going to house the SWAT team and some of the sheriff's special response emergency equipment that is scattered all over the county right now. So we're going to have that right outside the back door of the sheriff's office, which is going to make it for a quick response. But the best way to stop that is to try and stop it in the first place and keep an open dialogue, have an open dialogue between sides. But I think it is becoming apparent nationwide that there's two different kinds of people at these events, and some are there specifically to cause violence. And I think that the law enforcement does have to come down hard on those people. I was at the Batavia event, and it went over completely peacefully. And towards the end of it, we saw people pulling up in cars, dressed like Antifa, ready for a fight. Unfortunately, the event had ended before they got geared up.
Thank you. Did I ask you this question on civil unrest? I'm sorry, I lost my place.
Yeah, you did.
Okay. What steps would you take to decrease the partisanship of the county board, Mr. Fraz?
Actually, partisanship, when I got on, was not a big deal. We used to joke that the only partisan vote was when we voted within the board for the Forest Preserve president. So we get along pretty well, and I actually get along very well with my Democratic opponents. So I don't really see it as that partisan. The Aurora contingent seems to vote as a block often, but usually on issues that are important to them in Aurora, so I respect that. But there's not one Democratic member of the board that I couldn't sit down and talk to and do. And the other day I had lunch with two of my board members, both Democrats. We talked over things, and I consider them all friends. So I don't think it's that big of a problem.
Ms. Kosmarski?
I think overall, it is not, but there have been times where there has been some very clear-cut partisanship. What can we do about it? While certainly number of years on a board, bringing a certain amount of experience is worthy, I believe in term limits, and I think that a lot of our board members have been on the board for too long, and that it is time to get some new voices on the board so that we can kind of have a whole new body of people working together and go forward from that. I do think it's important just to have some new voices, some new viewpoints, and I think that's one way of doing that. But for the most part, yes. But there, I feel that there have been some issues that have come up that have been very split partisan-wise, and there's also been a lot of disrespect and disruption, and I've been to some of these meetings before COVID, and certainly it's been written about in the newspapers as well, and would like to have a clean start with a few new faces there to move forward and beyond some of those things.
Thank you. Ms. Kosmarski, if elected, what is something in particular that you want to accomplish on the county board?
Well, I'm going to bring up this issue, and I know it may be controversial, but people have to know that it's what I stand for. And the county board voted a few months ago to deny marijuana dispensaries in unincorporated areas. And I feel that was a wrong decision. I think we need to revisit that. We are facing a $14 million deficit as we go into next year, and it's not going to get any better with the effects of the pandemic on the economy. The revenue that the states have been using this for, human services, public health, the environment, the numbers are staggering. The law went into effect in Illinois in January. From February through the present, every single month has seen a record sales. I'm not sure what the August sales are, but in July it was $61 million. Colorado has seen $1 billion in sales between 2014 and last year. We need to find a new revenue source. without taxing people, and I really feel that this is the way to do it. Arlington Heights revisited their previous decision and overturned it, and they were looking at the numbers, and they decided maybe we need to consider this after all, and they did approve it.
Mr. Fraz.
There's a few things, and I've mentioned some of them. As transportation chairman, I've been, from the very beginning, working on the Longmeadow corridor and parkway project in the northern end of the county. Most people have never seen it because it's right up near the northern border. But that's a $140 million project, largest project in the county. And we'll be wrapping that up over the next year. And it was somewhat controversial, and I'm really looking forward to the ribbon cutting on that. So I want to see that to a completion. And also I had mentioned the multi-use facility with the brand new coroner's office. That will be completed next spring. Again, dying to be there for the ribbon cutting on that. I would say I absolutely do not support the marijuana dispensaries in District 18. Our Democratic sheriff, who again is endorsing me, asked the county board to locate them in central Kane County, in a municipality along Randall Road, because there's a 300% increase in crime around those dispensaries. So, Sandy, I'd say if you think that's something for District 18, you don't know District 18.
Okay, Mr. Fraz, is there anything you would like to say to an undecided voter?
To an undecided voter, I would say, not only for my race, but for the countywide races, such as auditor, county board chairman, treasurer, and circuit clerk, and the others, those offices have all been held, for the most part, by Republicans for many, many years. And we have the stats that I mentioned earlier that are undisputably good stats, and we would like to keep the team going. And I couldn't be happier to be part of that basic, simple management of county business. So to them, I would say, look at our stats. It's not hearsay; it's facts where we stand. If you want to look at Chicago-style Democratic union-controlled government, don't vote for me.
Ms. Kosmarski.
When you talk about some issues, you mentioned Longmeadow Parkway. It is a very controversial issue, and the referenda showed that there was very much opposed in that area. And the Parkway, after 18, 20 years of discussions, and they never could figure out how to pay for it other than having a toll. And we will be the only county in the state of Illinois with a toll bridge on a secondary road. So yay for that. I think it's time for a change. I really do think we need just a new voice to take things into a new direction. As far as the marijuana thing, there really is very little data, if any at all, to support that it increases crime. Go look around. It doesn't. And I have talked to a lot of voters, and many of the voters that I've talked to are all very supportive of a change like that. It is a source of revenue that we are very foolish to turn our backs on.
Thank you. And now we go to closing, and we'll start with Ms. Kosmarski.
Okay. Well, this election is very important, as we all know, for everyone. And again, the local aspect is important as well, because again, like I said earlier, it's part of our community. We live in the community that we're serving as well. We need to have some new representation, I feel, in our neighborhoods here, and it's just time for a new beginning. And a new voice. There's no limit to what we can accomplish when we're working together. We need a board that works together as a whole to work better for the people in Kane County. I wanted to remind everyone that early voting starts September 24th, and you can vote at the county or go on the county website and look for the remote sites that are around the county for your convenience. I always like to use one of my favorite quotes from The West Wing, and that's decisions are made by those who show up. And I'm asking you to show up. I'm Sandy Kazmarski. I'm running for Kane County Board District 18, and I would appreciate your vote, and let's get to work.
Thank you. Mr. Fraz.
I'm very proud of my 13-year history on the county board, and I love that quote about showing up because I'm very proud also to have consistently had the top meeting attendance record at the county meetings and the Forest Preserve meetings. I've negotiated some major issues in my district, major zoning issues such as Markland School expansion in Mill Creek, the Lafarge gravel pit expansion south of Elburn, and the MA Center campus zoning right near your house. They all went very well, and I'm very proud of how they turned out because we took a lot of time outside of the county process to bring both sides together and then brought them back to the county. I've facilitated hundreds of acres of open space acquisition in District 18, completed the Anderson Road Bridge project, stopped the train horns near Mill Creek. That was a 7-year effort that involved talking to the federal government, the state, and the railroad, which is sometimes as hard as the federal government. We solved the long-standing problem with the construction of the new coroner's office, and that's under construction and ready to go. And we're also solving many other department problems with that new building. I know and work well with community leaders, many of whom have endorsed me. And we'll be distributing hundreds of thousands of dollars in federal COVID relief to our local cities, villages, townships, not-for-profits, and fire districts. I know the 520 square miles of King County intimately, from Montgomery to Algonquin, and I'm available 24/7 by cell phone, and I respond promptly to all calls and contacts. And as I said, District 18 is a very, very busy district. I would say the busiest in the county, and there's a long learning curve. And I'm proud to have, it sounds like my opponent agrees with a lot of what we've done, so I appreciate that, and I ask for your vote on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll have a round of applause for our guests. And we'll take a break for the next group. So if you guys, I'm going to ask
We're going
you
out
to
this
go
way?
out this
Okay.
Hello, elbow bump?
Good thing the mayor isn't in here. He's going to tell you to put it over your nose. Well, then I get it. I have the same problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Just spray?
Who do we have?
What's his name? He just told us his name.
Who do we have?
Will,
Bachman.
Bachman,
Thomas,
yes.
Thomas.
Yeah. I think that's the other guy.
when we get the clue. Ready? And now we're ready to start with the candidates for Kane County Board District 14. And we are starting once again alphabetically. So we will go with Mr. Bachman with his 2-minute opening statement.
Good evening. First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event and inviting me to participate. I know it's a little bit trying conditions this year. Hopefully, we're back to normal next year. As you stated, my name is Will Bachman. I'm running for Kane County Board, District 14. A little bit about me. I moved to Illinois 15 years ago. My wife is a Kane County resident. She's lived here in Kane County her entire life. We also have adult children and now grandchildren that also live in the county. My employment history is pretty varied, actually. Started out as an aircraft mechanic, went through an apprenticeship. I'm a 26-year union employee. Have a CPA degree. My bachelor's degree is in accounting, of course. And for the last 8 years, I've worked for a research and development company as a system engineer. Basically, it's in the transportation sector. The reason I'm running in this race, I've always encouraged participation in the political process, and I've done it for others. And what I've found recently is there's a lot of angst about the way the political parties and political system is right now. People are frustrated. They don't feel represented, feel like their voice is not heard. And that's one of the things I'd really like to change. I mean, the political process, the amount of communication that should be taking place is grossly inadequate in all levels, basically. I mean, the people, the citizens, the constituents, they're the ones that we work for. It's a representative form of government. As a representative, you've got to interact with them, communicate, let them know the issues. And the good thing about Kane County is the information's there, but it's difficult to understand what's going on a day-to-day basis because the things get posted, a month later. Their input isn't solicited. How can you represent people if you're not actively engaged with them? So that's really what I want to try to do for Kane County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bachman. Mr. Davist?
Thank you. Good evening. I'll echo the thanks to the Chamber and City Council and Mayor Schilke for hosting and to the League for organizing and presenting this for folks, and to everyone out there that's listening and or watching. Appreciate the participation in this process. That is key to the success. We find ourselves in this country in the midst of a great deal of turmoil. We have raging social issues and a political process that's got presidential politics at the forefront, and then of course all of this under the unfortunate umbrella of a pandemic. And those things all deserve our attention and our best efforts. But what they don't do is preclude dealing with our local issues and our local business of taking care of Kane County and its constituents for us and taxpayers, residents. And that's what has always drawn me to this job. Something as simple as a leaf burning issue or a traffic signal, or a little larger, in my case, when I started the relocation of a sheriff's office and jail, in our district. But I view these through the lens of not just a resident and a family man, but also as a small business owner. So when we talk about budgets and constraints, they're not just concepts for me, they're not just analytics. They're a reality that I deal with in my life professionally, both public and private. It's it's 8 people that are employees for me that I have responsibility for. So I look at things through that lens, and I enjoy the work and appreciate the support that I've had over the years, and ask for it to continue to serve you.
Thank you. And now we'll start with question 1, and as I indicated in my letter, we kind of flip-flop. So question 1 will go to Mr. Davist first. What is the importance of the Kane County Board to the residents in your district?
Well, it's a direct link to your representative government. You know, this is, when we work on issues at the county, it really is right here at home. So if you are looking for a level of government that will touch your life in ways that, you know, Springfield or Washington are never going to do in the same way, we're right here. And, you know, it's roads and it's courts and it's the jail and sustainable water and land planning. This is a wonderful level of government, close to the people and essential to the things that touch your life almost every day.
Thank you. Mr. Bachman.
I would have to agree with my opponent here. I mean, the local level is actually probably the one that impacts the constituents the greatest, and it's local issues. The big thing with this, though, is that I found in talking to so many residents is they really aren't aware of the function of the board, what it does. Of course, everybody talks about taxes and not liking taxes. And I've enjoyed explaining to them the importance of the board, the structure of it, and there's just general a lack of awareness, and that's just the way it is politically now. People need quick information. They need to learn that the services that are available for them, the way the government functions. One of the things I do plan on doing is having monthly online and meetings face-to-face, and one of the first things I'm going to do, of course, is go over the structure of the board so people better understand the role.
Thank you. And starting with Mr. Bachman, question 2, how do you feel King County is handling the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, basically, I think both the state and King County have worked well together in handling the pandemic. The information as it's come forward has gotten to the citizens as it should. We've had the resources for the most part, or we've acquired resources through the various chains. So I think overall it's handled as well as it could. One of the issues I do have with the way things have been handled throughout the entire system is this isn't something that should have been unplanned for. One of the roles of government is ensuring safety. CDC set up a national laboratory system for things like this, these type of events, back in 1999. 2001, we had the anthrax issue. They've talked about pandemics as not if, but when. I have an issue with the way that there was no pre-planning for the results of it.
Thank you. Mr. Davis.
Well, we certainly have found ourselves in uncharted waters to a great degree, but I'm very proud of the public safety and health department systems that we have in place. We did receive funding, $92.9 million, and immediately formed a task force to understand the rules that would be involved in getting that money out and to whom. An ad hoc committee was then formed, ably chaired by our finance chairman, Mr. Hoscheit. I've participated in those meetings, and we've, I think to a great degree, allowed our health department director, Barb Jeffers, to assist us in our approach to this so that we can follow the science, we can be safe and prepared and provide PPE, and then financially we are making funds available to municipalities and nonprofits and library districts, fire protection districts, and small businesses. So we're doing everything possible as quickly as possible to address these things for the people of Kane County.
On that note, Mr. Davis, do you believe that King County has been transparent in sharing information about the impact of COVID-19 with the public?
Yes, I think that we've been diligent for many years in our attempts to be transparent in all the things that we do, through website, through Kane County Connects, through the current health department dashboard, and communication is essential and always a challenge to get all of the information in front of as many people as possible. We work at it every day. Our health department is doing a wonderful job, and our IT department assists with all of those efforts. So it's ongoing.
Mr. Bachman, do you believe that King County has been transparent
Yes, they've done an exceptional job. Basically, what's happened is everything, the dashboard that my opponent mentioned, yes, that's great. The amount of information they're putting out on a daily basis, it's allowed the citizens to be informed both of the nature of what is occurring and also actions to take to act responsibly to help contain it. There was the little dust up with the coroner over statistics, but that has been resolved. So for the most part, they have been very transparent.
Thank you. Several questions on COVID. Starting with Mr. Bachman. Due to COVID-19, what are your recommended spending priorities?
Well, as most people know, that both on a personal level and at the board level for the county, it's had a significant economic impact. Our budget for this year is out of balance by just over $14 million for the coming fiscal year. A big driver in that is the $10 million of lost revenue that is not happening this year due to the reduced economic activity. So that's a major issue that we're going to have to address. Now, at the federal level right now, there is discussion. They're trying to get another package through to get some more support to the state and local levels. Hopefully that'll help plug some of that. If the fair tax passes, there's also at the state level the opportunity some of that might be coming through to help offset that deficit. So, yeah, it's kind of still in flux. We should have more clarity by the time we take office, so.
Mr. Davis.
Well, the funds that we did receive, some of those, much of that will be allocated to municipalities and to these other districts and entities, as I mentioned, and they'll be able to make decisions for themselves on what they do with it. For the remainder that will continue to be under the control of the county, public safety will always be at the forefront. And again, in this case, our health department will have the lead, and we'll follow the science and work with Barb Jeffers, that director, with our sheriff, so that we have training and in proper techniques to keep everyone safe as we're doing it, and continue to keep everybody safe as we do it.
Thank you. Starting with Mr. Davis. What qualifications do you have to assist in managing Kane County's annual budget?
I think the perspective that I bring from being in the small business world my whole adult life means that, as I mentioned in my opening statement, these aren't just concepts. These are very personal for me. I live in a budget constraint world and understand what it is to sign the front of the check, not just the back of one. So I bring that perspective with me. I also bring years of experience in doing this job, and that's going to be essential as we move forward through more difficult times and with a new chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Bachman.
Well, basically, one of the things that I have is I'm a licensed CPA. Learned both governmental and financial accounting. And there's slight differences between running a business or even a household and understanding the budget versus governmental accounting. I've served as treasurer for a large homeowners association for approximately 8 years. So I've done the budgets there. And my current work as a systems engineer, we've had major national, international projects that I've worked budgeting for that also.
Thank you. Mr. Bachman, what more needs to be done to respond to environmental concerns for water and climate change?
Well, the water concerns should be an ongoing part of the board's analysis. Basically, water, ensuring you've got adequate water supply, reference the aquifers, should be at the forefront of one of our activities at the county board level. That's something that goes into, as you're trying to decide on community development and such, you've got to ascertain that there will be adequate supplies. So it's really an ongoing process. It's not, spur of the moment thing. climate change is affecting everything. So we've also got to address that. Big thing is climate change is happening, and it's going to take more than just small steps. Every county is going to have to do their part, whether it's changing the fleet over if it's economically feasible, to more alternative fuels and things such as that. But we should be exploring cost-effective ways to help slow down the effects of climate change.
Thank you. Mr. Davis.
I'm happy to report for the people listening and for my opponent that these are ongoing efforts. We are engaged in those efforts in a number of different ways. We've been a trendsetter, starting back with the land planning program that was referred to as the 2020 plan. And that's continued to evolve. 2040 and 2050 will be, coming along shortly. Those include a collaborative effort with the not just development, but with transportation, with sustainable water supply, with new technologies for greener, behaviors, whether it's adding solar panels like we did at the animal control, or engines that have the automatic shut-off for idling and then restart. So these efforts are ongoing, and we take all of them very seriously.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, what would you do to advance racial justice at the local level? Can you give me some specific steps?
I guess I would have to start with always lead by example. Live your life, the way that you would want others to emulate and get along. From a public policy standpoint, I would support all of those efforts. I'm very happy to say that we have a young, energetic sheriff who has embraced those things and asked for funding for training, for dealing with sensitive issues, and to have better response for mental health issues, to have body cameras, and we've supported those efforts.
Mr. Bachman.
Well, where I grew up in southeastern Virginia, we actually had a town about 30 miles to the north that was a sundown town. What that means is minorities had to be out of town before the sun went down or bad things happened. Also worked initially at a federal facility that had the separate but equal bathrooms that weren't really, they were separate, but they weren't equal. They were still, the remnants of it were there. So I've been aware of different types of issues on a racial nature for my entire life. A lot of people are unsure of the microaggressions that they're even actually happening because they're not aware. So we need a focus at the public policy level of ensuring that type of information gets out so people can understand what behaviors are really inappropriate. One of the things I'm going to do, as I mentioned, I'm going to have monthly meetings for my constituents, and I will be having at least once a year a group coming in and going over that type of information.
Thank you. Mr. Bachman, if elected, what particular standing committees are of interest to you?
Well, I'm a transportation systems engineer, so I think transportation might be a good one. I'm also an accountant, so finance would also be one that I'd be interested in. Mental health, so public health would be very important to me also.
Mr. Davis.
I've had the opportunity to serve and even chair most of our standing committees, and there's important work to be done in all of them. I currently serve on the administration committee, and we've very recently just had an official ceremony of groundbreaking for the multi-use facility. And so building management, which is overseen by administration, is very important. It's where we have capital expense sometimes, and we're able to, in this case, take advantage of historically low rates and a strong bond rating to do a building with bonds at 1.56%, one of the best values that we've seen in a long time. Human Services is a committee where I've had a chance to help shop for and put in place insurance programs that have saved money and a wellness program for our employees. I'll serve in any of the committees that they need me. There's important work to be done in all of them. I guess I should also put in there, we haven't had any mention, but when elected to the county board, you also serve as a forest preserve commissioner. I'm currently the president pro tem and the chairman of the finance and admin committee. We recently were able to refinance bonds, again, taking advantage of the low rates, and save the taxpayers $3.9 million. And I was happy to spearhead that effort.
Thank you. Mr. Davist, what does the board need to do now to prepare for the possibility of civil unrest and looting should it occur anywhere in Kane County?
Again, we've had discussions with our sheriff and the Office of Emergency Management, and they're very sensitive to those issues and have plans of preparedness in the event that that we need to deal with, with that kind of a violent outbreak.
Mr. Bachman.
Well, first of all, I would say what's going on nationally and even locally in this region is unfortunate. Most of the protests that happen do not involve any looting or that sort of activity, probably 97% of them. For the small number that are having that occur, I know that our Kane County sheriffs and the local sheriff's department are more than prepared with support from the state police to handle those types of events.
Thank you. Mr. Bachman, what steps would you take to decrease the partisanship of the county board?
I'll tell you, I wish I could decrease the partisanship throughout, not the county board, but all levels of government. It's gotten way out of hand. Basically, county board members represent everyone. So that's a big thing, is just working in your precinct, making sure everyone is heard, first of all. You've got to treat, well, there has not been in many of the districts enough communication with the constituents. So you've got to have an open mind, because I'll tell you, the 24 board members don't have all the answers. We got talented people throughout, so you've got to listen to all the input. But most importantly, the people, the constituents, have to know what is happening. They should not allow partisan behavior to happen if it's not in the best interest of the King County. So my goal would be better inform the residents of what's going on, seek their input, and have political pressure exerted to ensure that that partisanship is not happening. Additionally, I would like to see administratively a county administrator hired.
Thank you. Mr. Davis.
I'm happy to report that our board, which is currently made up of 24 members and 12 from each party, so we are a shining example, I guess, if you will, of bipartisan work. Most issues that come before us are addressed by the members of the board, not from a partisan perspective, but from what's best for Kane County, for the community, for the people that live here. And I'm pleased to have been a part of that. I think we'll continue on that path.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, if elected, what is something in particular that you want to accomplish on the county board?
Well, we have to continue to be vigilant on budgets, and that we've been successful in that for the last 8 years. 3 of those we froze the levy completely, and for another 4 accepted only that portion of the levy that represent new growth. So that kind of responsible budgeting will continue to be a goal for me, because as you've mentioned, people are always concerned about their tax bill, and probably the number one question that we get. But again, mentioning the forest preserve side, we've had tremendous success with referendums where the voters tell us if they would like us to continue with preserving open space, and it's been a resounding yes, and we've had wonderful advancements there, protecting thousands of acres, and I hope to see that continue as well.
Thank you. Mr. Bachman, is there something in particular that you want to accomplish?
You just want one? I've got several. Let's start with the size of the board. As Mark said, we've got 24 board members currently. There's been a push recently to get that reduced to 18. There's a state statute that limits counties of more than 800,000 to 18 board members. We've got about 2/3 that number in Kane County. The saving, basically, board members just earn a salary of $25,000 to $46,000 approximately per year, depending on the level of benefits you take. Over 10 years, reducing the size of the board would be save King County $1.5 to $2.8 million. Now, the arguments against that was that it would increase the size of the districts, and it would also, because there'd be additional committee assignments, that it would be offsetting the amount of savings you're going to get. That is not necessary. Well, that's not even true. Because what would happen is the size of the districts would go up by about 7,500 people for each district. And the level of communications in most districts to the constituents is almost nil. So there would be no real impact on any of the board members. Thank you.
Thank you. What do you believe the biggest challenge is currently for King County board members?
Who are we asking that?
Mr. Bachman.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, the biggest challenge, it's without a doubt getting us through this budget crisis that we're in. As I stated earlier, we've got a huge shortfall for this coming year. And there is a still major questions about additional sources of funding. But what's going to end up happening is we've got to get our businesses safely back open again, fully open, so that we can get that economic activity going, not just for Kane County, but for the businesses, for the citizens, the employees. We've got to get it back. Now, the only way we're going to do that, though, it takes all of us. We've all got to take steps, continue taking steps. I know it's been a long time. People are getting a little bit lax. We have to take the steps to protect ourselves and the other residents of Kane County so that it can happen as soon as possible.
Thank you. Mr. Davis.
Single greatest challenge for board members. I suppose we can't ignore the idea that the work to be done now is done with the constraints of the pandemic. So we have to continue to seek ways to meet, to communicate, to have our work done with those constraints. And that's a huge challenge. The budget process has and always will be a priority for any board member. We are the custodians of the taxpayers' dollars. We are the entity that is responsible for producing, sending out the property tax bill and answering questions about it. And I urge people to look at it because what they'll find is that we're about 5% of it. So it's always a challenge to communicate to people what is in their bill, what part of it is us, and that we then work with our countywide electeds who have an internal control statute that allows them to run their office, but we hold the purse strings. That will always be at the top of the priority list, I think, is managing that budget and protecting taxpayers' dollars.
Mr. Davis, is there anything you would like to say to an undecided voter?
As I mentioned earlier, certainly in this climate where we have, important issues, that are in the news and presidential politics at the forefront, I would ask them to remember the importance of all of those down ballot races, of the local government and what it really means for you. If you're feeling somewhat discouraged or alienated or that your vote might not count, come down to the lower part of that ballot and consider what you have there, because your vote really does count and really does matter, and it will be for a level of government that will be responsive to you.
Thank you. Mr. Bachman.
Well, I'd really like to basically echo what my opponent said. It's very important to vote this year, or vote every year. I mean, so much has gone into ensuring the right to vote for everyone. But the key thing this year is, whichever method you choose, just know that we want you to do it safely, and regardless of which way it goes, your vote is going to count just equally. So however you vote, just make sure you do it safely, and as Mark was saying, continue all the way down the ballot, because these local races tend to be the ones that most affect you in your day-to-day life. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll go to closing, and we'll start with Mr. Bachman. You get 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to reiterate thanks to the League of Women Voters and the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. And like I say, hopefully the next time you hold it, it'll be under better circumstances. The thing this year, it should be fairly easy for undecided and all voters. You look at your life today, look at what's going on. If you're satisfied with the way the government is performing at all levels, then vote for, whoever you decide. But if you decide that perhaps that things need to change, that there's a better way, that your voice needs to actually be heard, vote for someone who is offering change, that will actually listen to you, give you the information on what's going on. Seek your input, because we work for you, or at least we should. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Davist?
I guess I want to leave people with the idea, with the knowledge that this has always been very personal for me. Local government is your government. We are able to listen to you and to enact change that affects you, locally. It moves me still. I have passion for it. I live it in my private life as well. So it's not just a conceptual kind of approach. And I absolutely believe that we are the best value you can find for your tax dollar. When you consider all of the services that fall under the tent of county government and the group of people that have come together over the years to do that job, you're really getting your money's worth. And I am very proud to have been part of that, humbled by the support that I've had over the years, and ask you to step up and do that one more time.
Thank you. And so that now concludes our forum for the Kane County Board District 14 candidates. Let's give them a round of applause. All 4 of us. And so now we'll take a quick break until we bring in the next group. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Nice job there, sir.
And now we are ready to start the forum for the candidates for Kane County Board District 18. And we will start with the openings with Ms. Kosmanek. If you would go for 2 minutes, please.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Ruth Kosmanek, and I'm running for Kane County Board District 12, which is east side of the river. On the southern edge, it's Division Street in Geneva, and on the northern end, it's up to South Elgin. First, I'd like to thank everybody who's here hosting and doing everything to pull this evening off. So thank you to the League of Women Voters for Central Kane County, as well as the Chamber of Commerce, and of course to Batavia TV for getting this out there live so people can sit in the safety of their living room and check us out. A little bit about myself, because I'm kind of an unknown to politics, as this is my first time ever running. I've lived in the Tri-City area for the last 35 years. I've lived in all three of the majors in terms of Batavia, Geneva, and St. Charles. I'm married and a mother of 3 young adults, 20-somethings, and I found Kane County to be just a great place to live these last 35 years and raise my kids, everything from Tri-City soccer to enjoying the wonderful river, to the small businesses, the great restaurants. Even the doctors and the dentists have been wonderful here. So it's just been a good home for me. I do love the river. I use the trails an awful lot. I'm an avid bicyclist, so I do enjoy that very much. Now, why run for public office? This is my first time, and I've just finished my teaching career. And so it's time to give back in other ways. I taught for 36 years. I have the time and energy now to give to the community that has given so much to me. And so I'd like to run for public office and be your county board member for District 12.
Thank you. Mr. Shepro.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Ken Shepro, and I'm asking for your support to be your county board member from District 12. My wife and Maureen and I have made our home in the Fox Valley for over 30 years. We've been blessed with 4 wonderful children and 2 extraordinary grandchildren. And 2 days ago, we saw them off to Germany for 3 years, and that's kind of hard, but we will see them at some point. The Fox Valley is a great place to live, work, and raise a family. But the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted virtually every family these past months. We face unprecedented challenges. We've seen beloved restaurants and other businesses forced to close, and in many cases, they may not reopen without local government support. I'm seeking election to the Kane County Board because my record shows that I have the experience, qualifications, and independence to provide the leadership needed for the future of Kane County. I've worked with community groups to preserve neighborhoods, historic buildings, and open space. In my own village, I brought together the Nature Conservancy, the Illinois Audubon Society, and the village to perpetually preserve 34 acres of wildlife habitat at no cost to the taxpayers. For almost 8 years, I had the honor to be the attorney for the Kane County Board. I served for 20 years as a member of the Kane County Regional Planning Commission, appointed and reappointed by 3 different county board chairs. The land use plans we authored preserved open space for future generations and made Kane County a leader in water resource management and flood control, farm preservation, and innovative transportation and public health initiatives. I've remained in county government as a financial advisor to our fighting Kane County Coroner, Rob Russell. Currently, I have successfully worked with the county board to ensure that the first responders of our fire protection districts are given high priority in distributing federal money designed to assist with the financial burden COVID-19 has placed on local government. With your help, I look forward to continuing that work as your representative. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 1, starting with Mr. Shepro. What is the importance of the Kane County Board to residents of your particular district?
Well, the Kane County Board, even for people who live in incorporated cities such as St. Charles, and this district actually encompasses both the city of St. Charles, the village of Wayne, and the unincorporated areas that we commonly call Valley View. The fact is that even though those of you who live in the city have an alderman and a city government, King County is responsible to provide the sheriff's office. It's responsible for the jail. It's responsible for all of the activities that we associate with the tax collection. And in this case, lately, the King County Board is in charge of distributing $92 million of funding for local governments and businesses and other not-for-profit organizations. So the county board is relevant to everybody.
Thank you. Ms. Kosmanek?
I'm going to agree with my opponent on that completely, in that it is relevant to everybody because we use the services that are here. As county residents, we pay into the tax base, and how that tax base is used to benefit as many people and stretch those dollars as far as we can matters to everybody, whether it's, property, whether it's forest preserve, whether it's road upkeep, whether it's the sheriff department, the health department. It's just using those resources, stretching them as far as they can go, especially in these difficult times.
Thank you. Ms. Kosmanek, how do you feel Kane County is handling the COVID-19 pandemic?
Oh, boy. We're doing the best we can, right? That's what everybody's doing now, is doing the best we can. Is it good enough? No, we all have to get better. We've got to slow the spread down. We've got to get life back to normal as best we can. We all want to get there, but not without safety. Safety is most important. And so listening to our experts, following what the federal government, the state government, and of course our local health department says is significant. Just keep keeping on and don't give up hope, and keep washing your hands and wearing your masks.
Thank you. Mr. Shepro.
The King County Board, I think, has acted in a laudatory, bipartisan way to address the issue of COVID. That involved them having to stand up to the current board chairman and take over the CARES Act. CARES Act is the federal funding that's come into the county for distribution to cities, villages, and local governments such as fire districts and townships. I want to commend our current board member from this district, John Hoshite, who has taken the leadership of that committee, and I think they have done a great job in identifying needs, in getting a fair process underway to get that money distributed to the folks that need it, and particularly with respect to fire districts. A lot of people don't understand how fire districts work, but the county board has recognized that they actually provide the bulk of fire protection and ambulance service to our residents, and they are most in need of assistance.
Thank you. Ms. Kosmanek?
I think she already...
I did that one. We're on to a new question.
Do you believe Kane County has been transparent in sharing information? Did I just ask that?
No, that's a new one, transparency.
Okay.
I think there's been a lot of improvement there. Sure, is there always room for growth? Yes, because in the constituents that I've met and the potential voters that I've met, the first thing they always say is, what does the county board do? So maybe we need to do a little bit better job, but, the minutes for all the meetings, the agendas for all the meetings are up on the website. The Kane County Connects can be delivered to your inbox of your email every day, so if you want to stay up to date, you can read that. But there's always room for improvement. I think Batavia TV, having access to the meetings, listening in, you can call in now and listen to the meetings if you don't want to go there in public. So there's a lot of ways to keep yourself informed, and continuing to do those kind of things and building on them, I think would be a good thing, so everybody doesn't ask me, what does the county board do? They would know.
Mr. Shepro, do you believe Kane County has been transparent?
It certainly has been transparent. It's perhaps an unintended consequence of the COVID pandemic that in a way it's become more transparent. You used to have to take time off from your job during the day to go to a county board meeting. Now you can watch it on Zoom. It's become much easier for people to actually see what their county board is doing. Whether that's not worth the trouble that we've gone through to get that. But I think that's an example of how the county has reacted to allowing people to have more input and insight into what's going on. The elected officials have all gone out of their way, I think, to hold briefings and press conferences, and I think we probably know more about what our officials are doing than we ever have before.
On the same line, COVID.
Is this for me, or I think you asked her two questions in a row?
I'm trying to make it better.
Yeah,
So we're going with you, Mr. Shepro.
okay.
Due to COVID-19, what are your recommended spending priorities?
Well, I think we first have to address the first responders. And while that is both police and fire, I'm somewhat biased because I work with the fire districts, and the fire districts are the ones who have to respond, not knowing necessarily what they're getting to, although I would commend Sheriff Hain for the dispatch system that many of the fire districts use, so that we do know when we get a call if there is a suspected COVID event. But it's important that they be given the funding that they need. And then similarly, other areas of county government, the coroner's office, the sheriff's office, the public health department, all have needs that need to be addressed. But the county board has also prioritized helping small businesses. And I think that's important key because they are really the future of our local economy.
Ms. Kosmanek, what are your recommended spending priorities due to the impact of COVID-19?
I am going to say the health department and the sheriff department, the first responders, the fire, the ambulance, they're certainly way up there. Also, support of our local businesses. Maybe there's some small business loans with some of this grant money that we can use. We might have to do some support of those folks to get the tax base up and going, to get those businesses back up and running. So health department, first responders, sheriff department, Mr. Hain, I know, has a long list with priority numbers of what he needs, and then local businesses.
Thank you. What qualifications do you have to assist in managing King County's annual budget? Ms. Kosmanek.
That's a biggie, isn't it? We want to, we were doing so well for so long, and now with COVID and the tax base dropping and all of these expenses, we are going to be in the hole. So there's going to be tough decisions that have to be made. Listening to our constituents to see what they want, where can we cut, how can we pare this down so that we're not hurting people and we don't want to hurt services, but we also don't want to spend more than we have. We do not want to, continue in living in deficit or in any way, shape, or form. So it's going to be difficult. There's going to be difficult decisions to be made. I'm going to listen to my people and listen to the experts.
Thank you. Mr. Shepro.
I actually spent 8 years as county board attorney working virtually every day with the budget. I remember in midterm, there was the beginnings of a recession, and we had to work out legally as well as economically how to actually reduce the budget in midterm because we didn't have the revenue at that point to do what we needed to do. There's no question that revenues are down, not necessarily tax revenues, but other revenues, sales tax and so forth. But the problem is that we need to hold the line on taxes because we're already overtaxed, but at the same time, we need to continue to deliver the services that are not optional that people have come to rely on.
Thank you. Mr. Shepro, what more needs to be done to respond to environmental concerns for water and climate change?
My work on the Regional Plan Commission, we adopted a very stringent and award-winning nationally plan for dealing with water resources. The County Development Department and the Regional Plan Commission have been widespread advocates with our local municipalities. The difficulty is that under Illinois' system of local government, municipalities generally can operate independently of the county. We have some authority with respect to flooding control, things like that. But what we need to do is to continue to get buy-in through our own efforts of advocating for the plan that we've spent so much time on, and which I think has actually been very successful.
Thank you. Ms. Kuzmanik.
I would say that 2020 plan, now we're here at 2020, so we have to look further ahead, and
It's a 2040 plan.
now it's 2040? Thank you for that correction. Water, environmental, flooding, heat, drought, those things are just increasing tremendously. Again, listening to the experts in those areas, because I am not I do not have a strong environmental background. So I would listen to the experts, take in the information, go back to the constituents and see how they want those things protected. Of course, we all want safe drinking water, we all want good air to breathe, and we don't want flooding, particularly with the river situation.
Thank you. Ms. Kuzmanik. What would you do to advance racial justice at the local level?
I would start with awareness. I think, being that Kane County is a predominantly European American area, sometimes we are just unaware of our biases. So raising awareness, and I know being a public school teacher, there has been a lot of effort of that in the last 5 years in schools across Illinois. So we're improving. I think our sheriff, Ron Hain, has done some great work in terms of educating his staff and trying to do some staff development there to bring those folks along. I would look to our county health department, particularly in the mental health field, and see what suggestions they have. So back to the experts, take in the information and make decisions that's going to improve that area for all county constituents.
Mr. Shepro.
Racial justice is really more than just a series of slogans. It requires concrete steps to be taken. I applaud Sheriff Haynes' initiatives and State's Attorney Joe McMahon's initiatives in the area of training. The idea of defunding the police, frankly, is an absurd concept, but it is certainly true that local governments have a tendency to cut training because the public doesn't notice it as much. We need to reallocate our funds and make sure that police are trained. School teachers are trained, airline pilots are trained. We can't afford to cut back on training for our law enforcement people. We've made a good start, but there remains to be a lot to be done. And our new state's attorney, I'm sure, will work with the sheriff to continue those initiatives.
Mr. Shepro. If elected, what particular standing committees are of interest to you and why?
Probably the Judicial Public Safety, just because that was one of my areas. As County Board Attorney, I worked very closely as a member of the Regional Plan Commission with the Development Committee. There isn't as much development going on now, though, and I would say probably finance, because of my background in working with the budget for 8 years with Chairman McConaughey.
Ms. Kuzmanik?
I would say jobs is a high priority for me now because of what's happened with the economy and what's happening with people working. And people working spend money, and we want them to spend money in our county, so that will help increase our tax revenues. I would also say public service, again, because I have a strong background in public health and public service, and so I would like to help my community in that way. And finally, again, along that same line, the public health department. I was a health educator in the high school level, and so that's very passionate for me, particularly the mental health field.
Thank you. Ms. Kosmanek, what does the board need to do now to prepare for the possibility of civil unrest and looting should it occur anywhere in Kane County?
Well, I would say, first and foremost, support our sheriff department, because those are going to be the people on the front lines, and Ron Hain has plans. He's ready for that. When we had the situation that could have arisen a few weeks back, and it was handled very, very well, and in Batavia here, everything was safe and everybody was well. I would say, though, to expand it out besides just law enforcement, making people feel like they have a voice, making people feel like they've been heard, I think is the first step. So maybe some community forums that are open to that. If somebody has a concern, let their voice be heard.
Thank you. Mr. Shepro.
It's been disappointing to me that so many public officials have sought to excuse some of the civil unrest that's taken place on the grounds that there are legitimate grievances out there. While I don't often agree with Mayor Lightfoot in Chicago, I think she has nailed it when she says, peaceful protest does not involve looting stores. I do think it's important that we make a stand on that. First duty of government, I think, is to ensure that people are safe and secure in their lives and their property. I do think that there are things that can be done beyond that. Again, remember, we are a jurisdiction of 34 municipalities, all of whom have their own police departments. Well, actually, all but 2 have their own police departments. And so it's important that we work with them to get them the tools they need. The sheriff's office can do training, but if the local police departments aren't doing it and they don't have the resources to do it, then we're still going to be on the downside of that issue.
Thank you. Mr. Shepro, what steps would you take to decrease the partisanship of the county board?
Well, frankly, I think that the fact that we are going to have a new county board chairman is going to do wonders in terms of decreasing it, partisanship. Although I will say that, by and large, the disagreements on the county board have not been partisan in nature as much as they have been personality driven. I think that's going to change. I know that when I was the county board attorney, there was very little partisanship, and many of those folks are still on the county board with us. I've worked with members of both parties. I think I will be able to continue to do so. I actually went to court to represent one of the Democrat county board members on an election case. I do think that the committee that has been established to oversee the CARES Act fund has done an outstanding job of a bipartisan approach to problem solving, and I would hope that would be a example for us after the election.
Thank you. Ms. Kosmanek.
I would think to decrease partisan lines, be approachable. Communicate with both sides. Communicate with all the individuals on the county board. Reach across, go out of your way to see their issues from their side. You may not always agree, but try to find common ground. And that's how we get along as a people. I mean, nobody wants to see tax revenue wasted. Nobody wants to see services cut. So let's find where we can agree and try to move forward.
Thank you. If elected, what is something in particular that you want to accomplish on the county board? Ms. Kosmanek.
I think with the revenue situation that's happened, particularly with the COVID-19 and the businesses being affected, we don't want to see services cut. We may have to. So trying to stretch our tax dollars as far as we can and prioritize so we can do the most good with the dollars that we have, getting the businesses back up and running so we can have the taxes come in from there. That's where my energy would go this time.
Thank you. Mr. Shepro.
I think there are a number of projects that are still ongoing that still need to be brought across the finish line. The new coroner's facility, which was just had the groundbreaking a couple of days ago, we need to finish that. We need to complete the bridge at the north end of the county. That's been a matter of controversy and is nearing completion. The transportation area is one where we have improvements. We've just begun to install traffic circles, which all studies have shown are a tremendous saver of lives and injuries. And I just happened to drive around the second one the other day just across the river in Campton Township. I think we need to do more of that. We also need to be vigilant in a falling market of interest rates to opportunities where we can refinance debt and saving on both the interest rates and the principal.
Thank you. Mr. Shepro, what do you believe is the biggest challenge is currently for the Kane County Board?
I think the biggest challenge is making do with greater expenses and greater obligations because of the pandemic and less resources to do it. We have existing needs. I think the county board collectively had done a pretty good job in holding the line on taxes and spending. But like most other local governments, that's pretty much gone out the window with the unforeseen, in many cases, substantial expenses generated by COVID. At the same time, we're suffering revenue losses from such things as state sales tax and revenue sharing. So I think that having to figure out how to make that work without cuts in services that would be unacceptable to our constituents is, I think, the biggest challenge we're going to face in the coming year.
Thank you. Ms. Kosmanek.
I'm going to agree with Mr. Shepro on that one too. How we solve it might be different, but certainly this COVID-19, we've never faced this before, and getting everything back up and running from the businesses, to the schools, just to go and being able to go out and, play a baseball game and not having to worry how close you're sitting to another person. Those are things that we all want to get back to. And unfortunately, COVID has also suppressed the tax income, and there's going to be some hard decisions that have to be made. We want to continue the wonderful services that we've all become accustomed to. So, there's going to be some difficulties, and going back and listening to your constituents is the only way you're going to be able to do that, keeping their needs in mind without raising any more taxes.
Thank you. Last question before closing. Ms. Kosmanek, is there anything you would like to say to an undecided voter?
Please be involved. There were many times tonight where I agreed with my opponent, Mr. Shepro. There's going to be some differences, for sure. Look at our information, research us, go on the web, go to the websites, take that information in, make a decision, but please, please be involved in your community and go vote.
Thank you. Mr. Shepro.
I guess what I would say to the undecided voters is look at the record of the folks that have been responsible for Kane County government for 10 or 12 years. I think you'll find that our record is pretty good. We've held the line on taxes, we've increased services, we've increased economies, and we've responded to the crisis that's upon us now. This is not really a time, I think, for people to come in. We always need new ideas and new suggestions. We also need people with solid experience in dealing with many of these issues. In the past 4 years, we've had a substantial number of our experienced board members retiring. And I think there's going to be a need for people who can provide continuity along with the many new people and new faces that we have. So I would hope you would take that into account when you're looking at it, and I would agree. Look at our records, look at our qualifications, and by all means, vote.
Thank you. And now we go to closing. And Mr. Shepro, you're up first. 2 minutes.
First, I would like to thank the league and the Batavia municipal authorities for making this room available. I think these are valuable tools. I wish more people, I won't say more people attended, but I wish more people would take advantage of the information that is provided. It's very important that you vote. We've heard a lot about how the voting is going to go. We so far have over 80,000 requests for mail ballots in Kane County, and I'm sure that by the time the ballots are ready to be mailed out in 3 weeks, we will have close to 100,000. That's over 1/3 of all of the registered voters in the county. I still hear from people saying they are afraid to vote by mail. Someone will steal their vote or it will get lost. I could tell you, having personally viewed and toured the facilities that the county clerk has put together, it's never been safer or easier to vote by mail. And if you still are skeptical, get your mail ballot, go vote early, or go vote on election day and turn your ballot back in. But don't get caught short and not have your vote count at all. So that would be my message, I think, in closing, is look at our records, but make sure you vote on election day or earlier, and not both.
Thank you. Ms. Kuzmanik.
I have enjoyed living and raising my family in Kane County, and feel so fortunate now to have the time and energy to devote to helping the community. I would say, the making a plan so that you're not waiting till election day to figure out what you're going to do, but deciding, going and looking at the information for all the candidates, not just for county board, but for all the candidates. Make your voting plan, whether it's mail-in, whether it's early voting. I would dissuade people from going on election day because I'm worried about crowds, but trying to make your plan, and please get out and cast your vote. It will be counted. It does seem safe. Look at all of your options and make a plan. And thanks for the time tonight for people to be able to get to know me a little bit. I appreciate that.
Thank you. The League of Women Voters of Illinois supports vote by mail. We and the Central Kane County League have also toured the Kane County Clerk's office and met with Mr. Cunningham, Mr. Esquivel, and gone over the plans, and we are very comfortable with what we have seen. Kane County and Illinois also offers many, many, many opportunities for early voting. And so if you don't feel comfortable with vote by mail, please take advantage of early voting. I think that there are many, many sites available, and they are taking great precautions during COVID to make sure that safety and security is at the utmost. So, thank you very much. Let's give a round of applause to District 12 candidates.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And we will take a short break while we bring in the state's attorney candidates. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome to the continued forum for Kane County positions. We have now moved on to the Kane County State's Attorney candidates, and we will go alphabetically and have the openings of 2 minutes apiece. And Marianne will hold up the sign at 30 seconds. We'll have, and then the stop sign. We appreciate if you finish your thought, but not go on for a couple paragraphs after that, or I'll stop you. So, Ms. Moser.
Yes.
Mosser.
Mosser, correct. Thank you. My name is Jamie Mosser, and I'm running to be the next Kane County State's Attorney. I began my legal career in 2002 as a prosecutor in New Orleans when I was primarily assigned to the juvenile division. Eventually, I went up to the felony adult division where I did bench trials and jury trials, and then I was asked to come back so I can help screen juvenile cases, along with being in charge of a federal gun grant that was geared towards getting juveniles off the street and finding out where they're getting the guns from. In 2005, my husband and I moved back here to Illinois, where I took my next job as a prosecutor at the Kane County State's Attorney's Office. While there, I prosecuted cases from simple traffic offenses all the way up to homicide cases. I tried bench trials, jury trials, and had hundreds of hearings. I was in the domestic violence division, DUI, drug rehabilitative court, general felonies, special prosecution for arson and auto theft until I came back as the head of the domestic violence unit. As a supervisor, I supervised misdemeanor and felony attorneys as well as support staff. And in addition to that, I created a domestic violence diversion program that held abusers accountable while giving victims a true voice in the process. In 2015, I left the office, and since then, I have opened up my own firm where I practice family law, civil law, election law, and have been a criminal defense attorney in the community. I also spent 2 years as a legal aid attorney for Prairie State Legal Services. Kane County is my home. It is where my husband and I are raising our 3 children. It is a community that I want to keep safe and can do so as the next Kane County State's Attorney. Because of my experience and my innovative ideas, I can bring true criminal justice reform to Kane County by diverting individuals who are nonviolent, low-level offenders into treatment programs so that we can focus on violent offenders. I am asking for your vote on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Spence.
First of all, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for providing this forum. I think it's an excellent way to educate the electorate, so thank you for that. The election for Kane County State's Attorney is all about experience. This position is similar to that of a player coach. The State's Attorney's Office has about 65 attorneys and an office budget of about $7 million. And many of those attorneys are young lawyers with limited experience, so it's essential that their leader is someone who has done the job, so that they can look at that person and say he or she has done this himself, and I can look to them for guidance. The mentoring, the teaching, the training, all of those help prevent young attorneys from making preventable mistakes, which prevents mistrials, it prevents having cases reversed on appeal, and in the end, that saves the taxpayers money. The only candidate who can say that they have done this is myself. I've tried about 17 murder or homicide cases. My opponent has tried 1. In my 20 years experience as a prosecutor, I supervised 60 young lawyers at the Illinois Attorney General's office, and then I was elected circuit judge here in Kane County. Years later, I was elected chief judge by the other circuit judges. I supervised several hundred people and had a budget of about $17 million, and we came in under budget. When I say I have that experience, I am blessed to have it, and I want to put that to work here in Kane County. We have many challenges facing us, but we have some great programs in the court system: drug court, mental health court, veterans court, pretrial diversion. We need to expand drug court to provide treatment for those who need it, but at the same time keep our community safe. We need to continue to allow first offenders to take advantage of the pretrial diversion program. It has a 92% success rate, which is amazing. So tonight, I hope you see the difference between myself and my opponent. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Spence?
Yes.
Question 1. What are your goals for the state's attorney's office should you be elected?
My goals for the state's attorney's office is to beef up training and mentoring of young lawyers, because I think that's absolutely essential for these young attorneys, some of them fresh out of law school. Aggressively prosecute gun cases, because in my mind, there is nothing more dangerous to the safety of the community than unauthorized possession of weapons on the street. And we see it frequently. Last year, 120, 130 cases. Felony possession, unlawful possession of firearms cases. Those cases need to be prosecuted aggressively. There's no reason for a young person, and it's typically a young person with a traffic stop in the middle of the night. There's no reason for them to unlawfully possess a gun on the street, and it's the single most thing that endangers the community. The other thing I would aggressively prosecute is domestic violence cases, along with child sex abuse cases. Those child sex abuse cases, those children are affected the rest of their lives, and those cases need to be handled very seriously.
Thank you. Ms. Mosser?
Thank you. The first thing that I would do is I would change the makeup of the office so that we have a screening division as well as vertical prosecution units. By doing so, we have the ability to make consistent charging decisions from experienced prosecutors. By doing so, we also will get cases through the system in a much more efficient way that, again, results in consistent resolutions of these cases. The second thing that we will do is we will strengthen our current diversion programs and bring in new diversion programs. What we have to do is we have to focus on these low-level nonviolent offenders, and we have to get them into treatment and out of the criminal justice system. I agree that we need to look at nonviolent, or we need to look at the violent offenders and focus our prosecutions on them. By not focusing on these low-level nonviolent offenders and getting them into treatment, we can focus our prosecutions on the cases that need the most attention to keep our community safe. In addition to that, we are going to get back into the community to provide transparency of what we do and how we do it.
Thank you. Let's give a couple minutes on this next question. Ms. Mosser, how would you evaluate the success of a particular prosecutor? What are the factors you look at?
The factors that you have to look at is how they evaluate a case. When I was first taught to be a prosecutor, I was told to look at a police report and a criminal history. I was told to look at that when I was making my offer. And when I made my offer, I was then taught to listen to the defense attorney in the situation in which the defendant came before us. There is not a single person that comes into that criminal justice system that isn't there on probably one of their worst days. And we need to take that into consideration. We also need to take into the consideration the background of every person, the trauma that they may have suffered, the life that they have had before coming before us. To truly do justice in any single case, you have to listen to that, and you have to look at your offer again to see if justice is done. That is how I will evaluate prosecutors. Prosecutors who are respectful to everybody who comes into the system, especially the victims who have come in there by an abuser or by somebody who has chosen to put them in that position. I will evaluate them based on how they treat people, how they look at cases, and how they do justice in every single one. We are not going to look at people by statistics. We are not going to look at how many convictions they obtain. We are not going to look at how many people are sent to the Department of Corrections. What we're going to look at is the ability to see beyond the police report and the criminal justice system so that we can get individuals down a different path than where they are now.
Thank you. Mr. Spence?
Well, first of all, I think it is important to evaluate assistance regularly. I think that should be done annually. It should be a built-in process that happens automatically. It should be a roundtable of all of the supervisors in the office, looking at each person, because that person who's in courtroom A today may have just been assigned there, and so it's not really fair to have his supervisor evaluating him right now. He should also be, his previous supervisor should also be part of that discussion. But they should be evaluated on the number of trials, cases they're trying. It's a very simple metric to look at people and say, well, look, you've tried 2 cases this year, you've tried 20 cases this year, who's working harder? That's a big deal. How many cases that they're trying every year? How many search warrants they're preparing every year when they work with the police on very serious investigations? You need to take all of those things into consideration. The input of victims on cases that they did try. You need to have supervisors observing young lawyers or trying cases with them in the courtroom so that they know how those assistant state's attorneys are doing. Again, these are young, fresh out of law school, a lot of them assistant state's attorneys. They're young people. And honestly, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So they need to be regularly evaluated, and those evaluations need to be part of the equation for salary increases. They need to have merit-based salary increases. And I say that in a way very mindful of the fact that our salaries here in Kane County are way, way behind neighboring counties. We lose good, experienced prosecutors to other counties regularly because even smaller counties, Kendall, DeKalb, they pay more than we pay here. And that's when you have a young family, when you have children, that's a big deal. It's important.
Thank you. Mr. Spence, given the pandemic, what do you see as the most crucial issues for the Kane County State's Attorney's Office?
Given the pandemic, well, there's a couple things that come to mind. One of the crucial issues is what I just mentioned, is the pay scale that absolutely has to be adjusted. It was adjusted a few years back. It has not kept pace, and it needs to have built-in metrics to advance the pay of assistant state's attorneys who deserve it. But more importantly, the pandemic has severely slowed the disposition of cases. The disposition of cases has, I won't say it's come to a halt, but boy, has it slowed cases down. And that is something, once we can get a lot of this behind us, we only had our first jury trial in August, since March. So there's a lot of considerations, a lot of which are safety driven. Jurors want to know, potential jurors on a case want to know that they're going to be safe and that their health is not going to be at risk if they come and sit on a jury in a courtroom. There's a lot of factors to consider, but those are a couple.
Thank you. Ms. Mosser.
Thank you. The court system did slow down in regards to the disposition of cases, but what also happened is a lot of our cases increased, especially the ones of where people are victimized, like domestic violence and child abuse cases. The abuse and neglect numbers have risen incredibly. The domestic violence numbers are steadily growing. These are individuals who used to be able to seek help, either through the court system in orders of protection, through domestic violence shelters, or for children who were going to school, they at least had their teachers who were there who were seeing what was happening. That is the biggest thing that I've seen that the pandemic has done to the court system, is it not only has slowed down the cases that we already had, now we have less of an ability to deal with the influx of cases that are coming in. And cases that we must focus on because it deals with those members of society that have been victimized by family members who they're stuck in a home with, by children who are not being protected by their parents. It is our response to that, given the limited amount of attorneys we have, the fact that there are different schedules because of the pandemic, along with the court schedule. Thank you.
Along that line, Ms. Mosser, what factors are taken into consideration when negotiating a plea agreement?
The factors that are taken into consideration obviously are the act itself. You have to look at the circumstances of what the crime charged is. You also have to look at the criminal history, the prior behavior. Is this a first time? You then have to look at the individual themselves. Do they have mental health issues? Are there substance abuse disorder issues? Is there a lack of resource? Is there a reason behind what happened? When there are victims involved, you also have to look at what you can do to make sure that the victim is given a voice in terms of the process, which could include something like restorative justice. You must take into consideration all of that when you're coming to make an offer in the case. There should be no no time that a prosecutor is using anything like a person's race to make a decision. What they need to look at is where that individual's come from, why they're before us, and the circumstances that surround the actual criminal case.
Thank you. Mr. Spence?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to disagree with any of that. I think it's important that we look at the facts of the case. That is one of the primary things. But I think anytime plea bargaining is essential, you always have to plea bargain cases. That's 90% of our cases or more are plea bargained. And if you had trials for all those cases, you would never, ever dispose of the cases. Yeah, it's essential. But before an offer is made on any case, the primary factor needs to be the safety to the community. I don't care what the case is, whether it's a drunk driving case, whether it's a murder case, whether it's a sexual assault case or a child abuse case. The single most important factor is what effect is this going to have on the community? Is the community going to be safe if we make this kind of an offer? That certainly ties in, as Jamie just said, with the criminal history of the person. That's a given. You need to consider his or her criminal history. A race, of course, should not play any role in this. But the one other thing that really needs to be part of the equation is the effect that this has had on the victim. Because that is for many, many, many people, particularly children, that is a long-lasting consequence that really has to be considered.
Thank you. 2 minutes on this one. We should probably just make them all 2 minutes because there's a lot to be said.
We may be here a long time then.
There is a sense that the public is losing respect for the criminal justice system. What could you do to help improve this situation? Mr. Spence?
I think it is essential that the public have confidence in the criminal justice system. They need to have confidence that the right person is charged with the right crime. That's on the front end. And that goes to the screening element where you need to really have experienced assistant state's attorneys screening every felony case. But there needs to be a widespread confidence in the public that this is the right guy and he's charged with the right crime. And at the other end, there's also a thing where you need to have confidence that once this person is in jail or imprisoned, or sometimes whatever, just on probation, that he indeed was the right guy. What happens often, as a judge, I heard many, many of these cases. A defendant sitting in prison will file a petition for examination of evidence that was not available at the time he was convicted. The primary thing here is DNA evidence. And if there is DNA evidence that would lead to the reversal of a defendant's conviction, if it would lead to showing that he is not guilty, that needs to be done. You need to have people who are experienced reviewing those cases. Those are only cases, though, where the defendant raises an allegation of actual innocence. And when that occurs, then, yes, we need to have very, very experienced prosecutors reviewing that conviction to make sure that this is the right guy, it was the right crime, and this is the right conviction. Some of the other things I think are that you really need to do as far as confidence in the system is outreach to the community. And I'm not sure that it's necessary to have like formal boards and advisory committees and all that kind of stuff, but I do think it's important to meet with community leaders and for people to know that they are listened to, that you will listen to their concerns. I think that's important.
Thank you. Ms. Mosser?
The answer is transparency and accountability. For a long time, we have had a system, a criminal justice system, that hasn't taken into consideration justice for every single person. We've unfortunately had a system that has been oppressive, that has not done what is right. We've had police officers who have committed crimes. We've had police officers who've done amazing work and shown up for victims and shown up for justice. But the problem is we don't have belief in our criminal justice system any longer, and we need to show that we have that ability. The first thing that we're going to do when I'm state's attorney is that we're going to create a community prosecution unit. This unit will be made up of prosecutors within the office who will go to the meetings, who will listen to the people, who will be a liaison to the police departments. They will report back to the office so that we can be proactive in what we're doing and not just reactive. In addition to that, we will have a conviction integrity unit so that if there is a claim that there was misconduct on the part of the prosecutor, the police officer, or even the criminal defense attorney, we're going to review that in the office. Because it is important that when somebody comes through that criminal justice system and they're held accountable, they must be held accountable for what they did. The last thing is we do need to create a citizens review board of any case that involves police officer misconduct or allegations of misconduct in a current case. If a police officer is accused of a crime and the state's attorney's office decides to charge or not charge, the community needs to know why. And that's important because traditionally and in the past, we've had a system that hasn't held people responsible, including police officers. I 100% believe that our system is changing and we have the ability to make it exactly what we want it to be, to hold every person accountable no matter what their job is. But the only way for people to know that is happening is for the citizens to be able to be a part of it, to listen to it and be the ones that represent to the rest of the community that I have done my job as your next Kane County State's Attorney.
Thank you. Ms. Mosser, what are your priorities for addressing juvenile justice in Kane County?
So there are two ways to look at this. The first is going to be for the actual juveniles up until the 18 years of age, and then the youth who are from 18 to 23 as their brain is still developing. We need to employ in our juvenile justice system already the continued belief that we're looking towards rehabilitation. We want to put them down a path where they're no longer coming into our criminal justice system and certainly not as an adult when they reach 18 years of age. We have to provide treatment. We have to look at holistic measures that make sure that they are able to go to school, that they're able to get jobs. The moment they reach 18 years of age, it doesn't suddenly mean that they're able to make correct decisions. We need to take that into consideration so that we're not saddling an 18 to 23-year-old kid with a conviction that's going to prevent them from getting a job in the future, applying for housing, or even going to school. We need to bring back peer jury programs. We need to look at counseling measures. We need to get the community involved in our criminal justice system again so that we're truly able to make sure that people go down the right path. If we do not take care of that group of individuals and specifically look at it in a divertible sense, as a diversion program that attempts, again, to make sure that they understand and take responsibility for what they did, that they're held accountable through our system, but they're also given the tools to do better as they get out of the criminal justice system so that we don't see them again, we are going to be failing our juveniles in our system. We are going to be setting them down a path where they are going to have further criminal behavior. We also need to get back into the schools, and we must talk to kids. We have to talk to them about DUIs and sexting and date rape. We have to be there to provide education again so that we can be proactive to the issues that are out there and not just reactive.
Thank you. Mr. Spence, what are your priorities for addressing juvenile justice in Kane County?
First, I do want to recognize that our juvenile system already diverts a large percentage of the youthful offenders, of the juvenile, who in the old days we would call them juvenile delinquents, but they are juveniles who commit crime. Our system diverts the large percentage of those already. The youth home has, or the juvenile justice center, incarcerates the most violent ones. Its population is a fraction of what it was 10 years ago. So much of that is already going on. I don't think there's a whole lot of new programs that need to be reinvented here. The major question, of course, always has to be protection of the public. That has to be paramount. Last week, I had a conversation with the Cook County judge who is responsible for all juvenile cases in the Englewood neighborhood of Chicago. On her caseload, which is hundreds of cases, there are 6 stolen car cases, and every other one is a gun case. Every one. And the Cook County State's Attorney's Office is dismissing most of those gun cases. That's not going to happen here. I don't care if it's a 14-year-old who's got a gun or an 18-year-old or a 28-year-old unlawfully possessing a gun. That's not going to happen. Those, again, are top priority cases. I do agree that there has to be equal justice under the law. Youthful offenders need to be treated the same, whether they're from a wealthy neighborhood in St. Charles or from a poor neighborhood in one of the other cities. They should have equal access to the same programs. They should have equal access to every other thing that will help rehabilitate them. And certainly for property crimes, for nonviolent crimes, we should, of course, be looking at alternatives to incarceration. That's just a given. But violent offenders, we need to really pay close attention to.
On that note, moving along in age, should emerging adults, 18 to 25, in the criminal justice system be treated differently than those older adults committing crimes? Mr. Spence.
Well, I think there is a wide-ranging movement to say yes to that question. And to say that those up to maybe age, how long a time here are we having?
18 to 25.
No. I'm tired. Time to answer the question. Sorry.
Oh, 2.
Okay, thank you. They are young, and their brains are still developing. And it does take longer, of course. But again, we are looking at the safety of the community and protection of the public. So it's going to vary greatly as to what crime that they're charged with and what the facts show as to what they've done. If you have a youthful person who murdered somebody, well, you know what? He's still going to be treated pretty seriously. Now, the U.S. Supreme Court has said it's not going to be life imprisonment. That is probably 8 or 10 years old now. He is not going to be sentenced to life imprisonment, and he is going to have a sentencing hearing where the judge considers all of the factors, including his background and the different factors that played into the offense, his rehabilitative potential, any psychiatric issues, all of that stuff. And that's as it should be. All of those things should be considered. But yes, I would agree, 18 to 25-year-olds, to answer your question, 18 to 25-year-olds should be treated differently than 25 to 40 to 50 to 60-year-olds, of course.
Ms. Mosser.
Yes, absolutely, and I alluded to that in my last answer. We have to take a look at what happens when they reach 18 years of age, and we have to take into consideration that obviously they're still developing, they're still growing, they're still making decisions. And we also have to take a look at a lot of these kids, when they're emerging in the adult criminal justice system, were already in the juvenile justice system. And we can't hold that against them. We have to continue to do our best to steer them into the right direction. We need programs like peer juries, which actually gives them the encouragement and the respect that they probably hadn't had in their life. We have to make sure that they are held accountable for what they did, that they take responsibility. In a lot of those cases especially, we've been able to use a concept called restorative justice. Restorative justice is when, in appropriate cases, the victim of the crime is put in the same room with the offender of the crime so that the offender can truly understand what his or her actions did in terms of the victim in the situation. Study after study has shown that this remarkably helps youthful offenders in that age group understand the consequences of what they've done and puts them, again, down a different path. It also gives the victims an unheard voice, a voice that's not just something that they say in trial. It's a voice where they can actually tell the person, this is what you did to me. It's empowering for a victim as well. Throughout my career as a state's attorney, I have been driven to give victims a voice in this entire process. And that's what I want to do with our youth population that are from the 18 to 25 years of age. We need to be able to involve the victims that want to be, and it's appropriate in that process, so that we can make sure that these youthful offenders do the right thing, make the right choice, and are given the tools in which to do so.
I have one real quick yes or no question, and then we're going to go on to one that you just started with. Do you believe people age out of crime?
No,
Yes or no?
I don't.
Mr. Spence,
Yeah, I do.
for my own person.
With the footnote, of course, but
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go back to Ms. Mosser. What is your position on restorative justice that you just started?
Okay, well, obviously, I'm a big fan of restorative justice. Restorative justice has to be applied in the appropriate situation. So obviously, there are many different crimes that it's not appropriate in: criminal sexual assault, child abuse, a lot of domestic violence cases where the domestic violence has been long-standing. Those are cases that this may not be appropriate in. But there are a lot that it has been appropriate in. There are a lot of cases where the criminal behavior from the person, even when they're over this 25 years of age, it's not until we're really faced with the person who they victimized that made an impact on the individual. Unfortunately, some of the people who are in our criminal justice system learned the criminal behavior when they were younger, sometimes from family members, sometimes from friends, and it's something that kept going. It's something that some people have justified because of their history. They're doing it because they're stealing for food. One of the things that they don't often get to see, though, is how it truly affects another person. Having the ability to properly do restorative justice gives the victim a voice in the case. And ultimately, when we're looking for the safety of the community, that's what we want to do, because we want the victims of crimes to understand that this is their process too, that they have a right to say something, that they have a right to be a part of this process. But most importantly, if that can make the impact on the offender the way that it is intended to do so, we will make our community safer because we are giving that individual, that offender, a different choice to make the next time when faced with that same decision.
Mr. Spence, what's your position on restorative justice?
Yeah, I think restorative justice is a great concept. I approve of it, with the caveat that it can never be applied to any violent crimes, including, I can't foresee it being applied to any domestic violence cases just because of the relationship of power versus powerless in those cases. That certainly wouldn't have my approval. But I think in addition to, so all you're really talking about is property crimes, nonviolent crimes. But the other thing that I think really would help the restorative justice along is mentoring of defendants. And a lot of this, it should be post-release, once they get out of the county jail, once they get out of the Department of Corrections. Many of these offenders don't have life skills, and they need to learn how to live in the real world. They need somebody to walk alongside them. They need somebody to mentor them. This is a place, I think, where the faith-based community can really step up to the plate and really should step up to the plate and provide mentors for these people. Now, you have to want to be mentored. You have to be willing to be a part of this. But I think it's a fantastic way to try to really deal with and actually prevent crime. I do agree with Jamie on that. I think it really does help prevent criminal activity in the future.
Thank you. What is your opinion of the deferred prosecution program, Mr. Spence?
Yeah, Kane County has had a deferred prosecution program. It was actually the first one in the state of Illinois. And it started way before I was ever in the office, but back in those days it was more of an informal type thing. And it really became a formalized part of the procedure about mid-90s maybe. They have done, and I think it's a fantastic program. The whole idea is for first offenders, many youthful offenders, but not always. It can be someone who's a little older and just has a first offense. Property crimes, not violent crimes. And what it does is, if there's no objection from the victim, no objection from the police department, then they're allowed into this program, and they do hours of community service and things like that. I think it's a terrific program. They have done the state's attorney's office did a longitudinal study about 2015 maybe. I could be a little off there, but it's about that. And they looked at hundreds and hundreds of cases of individuals who've gone through the pretrial diversion program. And the results were just off the charts. 92% did not reoffend, ever. Which you can't really say that about any other program, hardly. It is a fantastic program. In my mind, it and the mental health court are both just outstanding programs. They've existed for quite some time. They're not brand new. But they should be utilized more. We should try to push more people through those programs just because they do such a wonderful job. It's all about holding people accountable, but in a way that is meaningful to that person, individualized. And some people, accountability looks different for different people. For a person in mental health court, it's going to look way different than it is for a drug addict. But it's accountability. It's accountability to take your meds, if that's what it is. Or if you are in drug court, it's accountability to not use.
Thank you. Ms. Mosser.
Thank you. I'm a big fan of deferred prosecution, and in Kane County, we have been leading that charge. We have deferred prosecution for many different types of offenses, including theft, including drug offenses, and one of the ones that I am most proud of is the Domestic Violence Diversion Program. Back in 2010, when I was the head of the Domestic Violence Unit, I am the one that proposed that program, I am the one that wrote it up, and I am the one that brought it to Kane County. Thankfully, I had the support of State's Attorney John Barsani throughout all of that, and when Joe McMahon came into office, he continued to support it. In 2019, for the annual report, State's Attorney McMahon reported that of the people who participated in that program in 2019, 75% of them successfully completed it. Now, I want you to think about it. These are not the crimes of somebody who's walking down the street and you just randomly punch somebody. This is somebody that you live with, somebody you've been in a relationship with, somebody that you're related to. These are not people who are going away. These are people who you could have children with. There was a program that was created that made it safer for people in our community. And that is something that I bring to this office as the next state's attorney. The ideas, the innovative ideas to look at something in a different way and to bring forth a program that truly keeps our community safe. And again, it does so through the use of deferred prosecution by holding people accountable, having them admit and take responsibility for what they did. That is the biggest portion of deferred prosecution because the carrot at the end, the goal, obviously, is that there's not a conviction on their record. Taking responsibility means that a person is less likely to reoffend because they already realized that what they did was wrong. Getting them into treatment quicker so that they can deal with any underlying issues that causes criminal behavior, like partner abuse intervention programming for domestic violence, is the key to keeping our community safe.
Thank you. What can you do as Kane County State's Attorney to advance racial justice within the system? Ms. Mosser.
Thank you. Again, this is about transparency, and this is about how we're going to run the office. The first thing is any case that is screened, a felony case right now, is screened by a prosecutor who is on a priority line, essentially. We have somebody working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, holidays, weekends. The problem is the way that it's set up now is that there are people who are brand new to the office, as well as people who have been there for 20 plus years. You have a difference in how you charge people. We need to have a screening division that has experienced people so that the charges are consistent and they're done based on the criminal act and not on any other factor. In addition to that, we need to screen these cases in a way that we are not given any information about the offender with the exception of what they did, and obviously the criminal history if that's relevant for the decision making. This takes away a lot of the implicit bias that we've seen throughout our system. And then, and this is important, we have to release who we're charging, why we're charging, with all the demographic information and how this case resolves itself to see if we are perpetuating the racial issues that we have seen. We have to do better. We have to get in the community and we have to tell the community this is what we're doing. We have to make sure that when policing is happening, obviously that they're looking for the violent offenses, but we're not just targeting certain areas because that's what we've done in the past. We need to provide training. We need to provide communication. We as prosecutors need to get back into the community and we must discuss what is happening with the community members so that we are doing justice in every part of Kane County, whether it's from the south end of Aurora all the way up to the north end of Carpentersville and Elgin.
Mr. Spence?
Well, this is an interesting area. I do think consistent screening of cases is important. I think there's an inference here that I don't agree with, because I think we have very, very dedicated men and women in the state's attorney's office who do not make charging decisions on the basis of race. I don't think they do that. If they did that, and I'm the state's attorney, they wouldn't be working in my office. But I do not think that takes place. Now, we don't know exactly what takes place. We read the police reports to try to get a feel of what the case is about and what happened and the facts of the case. We aren't there on the street with the police officers. So there are some areas that we have to be sensitive to and that we have to be willing to examine, and we will. We have to be willing to examine the facts of the case and perhaps look a little deeper at times. But in the big picture, a murder of an African American is no different than a murder of a Caucasian or the murder of a Latino. It doesn't matter. A dead person is a dead person. And those cases should be equally prosecuted. I really don't care who the defendant is. I don't care about the race of the defendant. It doesn't matter. There's a number of cases in this county that are drive-by shootings. I don't care anything about the racial makeup of any of those defendants. All I want is to see is justice is done. I want the public protected from that shooter. That's what I want. Now, I will say one thing. Prosecutors always have, as any lawyer in any case, the ability to excuse jurors for what they call a peremptory challenge, for basically any reason other than a race-based reason. I do think it's important to hold prosecutors to that because there is an assumption that minority jurors may not be willing to convict a minority defendant. We should not be excusing jurors based on that assumption. That's not right. It won't happen if I'm state's attorney.
Thank you. What is your position on bail reform?
On what?
Bail reform.
Bail reform. Okay. Well, bail reform is not a new thing to Kane County. It's a new thing other places, but Kane County was one of the pilot counties for a bail program that began with Judge Judith Braca as the chief judge. So that would have been about 2012, 2013, 2014. It has been ongoing since that time. It was implemented at that time by the Illinois Supreme Court. This is an Illinois Supreme Court initiative. Now, having said that, so I think actually a lot of progress has been made as far as setting reasonable and fair bond for criminal defendants. Having said that, I still think the important issue is the safety of the community. Doesn't matter who the defendant is. Doesn't matter what his race is. The single most important thing is what effect is this going to have on the community, on the neighborhood where this guy lives, or whatever it is. And if he needs a high bail, well, then we're going to advocate for a high bail. That's the way it is. You got to keep the community safe. And so if that includes setting high bails on violent crimes, on violent defendants, then we're going to do it. Or I shouldn't say that. We are going to advocate to the judges. Our position will be that that person should have a high bail. I don't see anything unfair about that. I think the single most issue is the protection of the public.
Ms. Masser.
Thank you. Whenever a bail is set, obviously the first thing that you have to look at is whether or not this person is a danger to the community. And that's the single biggest factor that we have to look at. When setting a cash bail, the idea behind that is that you're either setting it so high that somebody's not going to get out and now the community is safer as a result of it, or you're setting a cash bail that causes them to want to come back to court because they don't want to lose that. I think the bigger concept behind this is how bail reform is actually applied when you look at the situation of a person who has money and commits a retail theft and you set a $5,000 bond on them, and the person who doesn't have money who commits a retail theft and you set a $5,000 bond on them. Now, it looks as if those are the same thing, but really it's not, because this person who has money gets out of jail. The person who doesn't stays in jail and may be more likely to plead guilty just to be able to get out of jail. That's the concept behind bail reform. Now, in Kane County, we have been doing it right. We have been making sure that people who come into jail are evaluated by our probation department. And they're looked at to see, one, if they've had any issues ever coming back to court in the past, and two, whether or not there's a likelihood of recidivism. That means further danger to the community. And based on their level, their scoring level, then a bond amount may be higher or bond conditions may be put on place. And in addition to that, our probation department, our pretrial services, is actually monitoring these individuals. So in addition to the court having these requirements, our pretrial services are calling these individuals, having them do drug testing, referring them to counseling, making sure they get a job, making sure they come back to court. We're doing a great job in Kane County. There's no question about it. But we still need to do more. And we always have to be aware of that situation where somebody unintended stays in jail because they don't have the money to get out. That's not what the purpose of bail is supposed to be. We need to make sure to use our bond conditions more to protect our community.
Thank you. How would you instruct your ASAs to prosecute cases in which the defendant has mental health issues?
So of course you have to always take a look at the categorization of the crime. When you're dealing with something that's a trespass to a building versus a homicide case, obviously that's going to be taken into consideration. But we need to make sure that we do not criminalize a person that has mental health issues, and that's the biggest thing. Mental health issues are not something that can be controlled without the assistance of counseling and sometimes without the assistance of medication. The first goal in any single one of those cases is that we need to try to refer them into treatment. In Kane County, we have a fantastic diagnostic center that evaluates a lot of the defendants that go through our system. And based on that evaluation, there are treatment recommendations. We can also use the many different services that we have in Kane County that people utilize on a daily basis or need to be referred to because maybe they had no idea it existed. When you do that and you encourage somebody to get into treatment, you need to make sure that that's reflected in the court case as well. Because again, a person who may not be able to control what they've done or may not be able to understand the severity because of mental health issues, if you then tag them at the end of it with a conviction, that again could have those long-term consequences that causes them to continue to spiral and stay in the criminal justice system. So again, evaluating every single case on the severity, on what has happened in the community, it is always going to be my goal to get people into treatment first, because that is the true way to keep them out of the criminal justice system and ultimately keep our community safe.
Thank you. Mr. Spence.
Great question. Great topic. Mental health court right now in Kane County has about 25 probably defendants. I think it is a fantastic program. Our jail and the whole criminal justice system should not be used to house defendants with mental illnesses unless they are truly violent criminals. And there is that possibility. But when we're talking, and this is the norm, when we're talking about nonviolent crimes, I think it is just a terrific program. And if you've ever attended any of those graduations where people graduate from the mental health court and have complied with all the terms of their probation, they are very, very moving. They are just, it is such a great thing to see people successfully complete everything that's required of them. And actually, they're being held accountable in a very kind of a gentle way. But it works, and it's a great thing. And they don't need to be held accountable in the same way as other people do. Their accountability is making sure they're taking their medication, making sure they're going to counseling, whatever it is. Are you doing that? And then when they've done that successfully and successfully completed it, and the case is dismissed at the end, that is a win-win for everybody. It's terrific.
Thank you. In your own words, you already answered that, right? No, the mental health?
Yes, I did. I went first.
Yeah.
I didn't make a mark on that question, sorry. In your own words, how would you describe the office that you are running for, Mr. Spence?
Well, it's the chief legal officer of the county. It is the legal counsel. This is one. Okay, thank you. This is the legal counsel to every elected county official, and actually every employee who takes action in the course of his official duties of performing his job. So that would be the transportation department, that would be the jail, of course, the sheriff, every county, the county board, you provide advice to them and so forth, all of which is very important, and all of which can have real serious ramifications if it's not done well, because the county needs to rely on your legal advice, and it needs to be good. That's been an issue in recent years, but not whether or not it was good, but disputes over that and conflict that arose and so forth. But the primary job of the state's attorney is to prosecute crimes that are committed in Kane County. That is the primary objective of the office.
So all of that is technically correct. That's exactly what the Kane County State's Attorney does. We have a civil division and we have a criminal division. What I think of it as is the greatest job I've ever had. Being a prosecutor means that you have the ability to do the most good in our community. You can do justice. You can look for the right end result for a case. You can stand there with the victim and help them get a voice in a process. That is what the state's attorney's office is to me. You can stand up in civil court and with the county board members and make sure that they are doing what's right for the community. You can advise them legally on these are the things that we should do, these are the things that we don't. This is how we stay out of trouble. So that our money goes towards our community and not towards needless litigation. In criminal court, in abuse and neglect court, in domestic violence court, we are there for the people of the state of Illinois. And that's why I'm running to be state's attorney, because that is the best job. That is the job that I did the most good. And that is the job that I will continue to do when I am elected as state's attorney.
Okay, let's go with closing. And Mr. Spence, you are going to go first.
Okay, well, thank you. As I said earlier, this election is all about experience. It's about which candidate has the experience to lead this office into the future and face actually numerous challenges that lie ahead. You know, a number of years ago, I had a medical situation that required a surgical procedure. I went to a local specialist. I asked him how many times he had performed this procedure. He said 35 times. You know, at the time I thought, that's pretty impressive. That sounds good. Then I went to consult with a specialist down at Northwestern Memorial, downtown. I asked that doctor how many times he had performed this procedure, and he very humbly said, well, it's about 10,000. And it made my choice so much easier. There was no choice. So here, we're both former prosecutors, one with 13 years of experience, one with 20 years of experience, one with 18 years experience then as a judge, both in the trial courts, then as chief judge, which is administrative, then on the appellate court. Do you want someone who has tried one murder or homicide case, or 17? Do you want someone who has supervised 2 or 3 attorneys or 60 attorneys? Do you want somebody with no budget experience or someone who has successfully handled $1 million budgets in the past? The chief judge's budget, $17 million. And we came in under budget, I would add. Transparency in government is a big issue. Your choice as a candidate who has no experience with FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, or you have a choice between another who, as an appellate court judge, wrote 5 separate opinions dealing with FOIA, in each one ordering the government agency to tender the information that was sought. Not because it's my personal opinion, but because that's what the law dictated. Whatever the law, this is the rule of law that we're talking about. And the rule of law is at stake here. Check out my website, SpenceForStatesAttorney.com, or my Facebook page, Bob Spence for State's Attorney, for more information. Compare our websites and our Facebook pages. I think you'll be convinced we need a candidate with experience because experience is bipartisan.
Thank you. Ms. Mosser.
Thank you. I do agree that to be the next King County State's Attorney, you would have to look at experience. And I will have to humbly disagree with Bob that I've only tried one murder case. In New Orleans, in the first 2 years of being a prosecutor, I was assigned 2 different homicide cases, both of which I first chaired. In Kane County, I had the opportunity to be second chairs and third chairs on many cases before I left where I was assigned a murder case. I think that that's important. It's obviously important, and I would never take away the wonderful things that Bob has done over the years. But what you also want is a state's attorney that's going to understand the people that come before them. And it's not going to be the same that it has always been. Not only have I been a prosecutor, but I've also been a civil attorney. I've helped people keep their house. I've helped people not lose where they're living because of an eviction. I've gone to family court and I've walked people through cases that have been so traumatic that they acted in ways that they never would have acted normally. I've gone to court for domestic violence victims in civil cases and defended them and stood up for them in protective order cases. I've held their hands as they've seen horrible things happen and the emotions that they've gone through. And I've been a criminal defense attorney. Out of the 2 of us, I'm the one that has had a client who is facing criminal charges because of a bad decision, or is facing criminal charges because of a mental health or drug addiction issue. I was the person who got to be able to advocate for them, to talk about mitigation, and to realize how it is when you have a prosecutor's office that is willing to listen. So experience does matter. And you want somebody who has been through every aspect of those different cases so that every person who comes before our criminal justice system is treated with respect. For more information about why I'm running, please do visit my website at www.mosserforkanecounty.com. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, and I'm on YouTube. It is important to compare the candidates, and that's when you find out I will do more for Kane County as your next state's attorney. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. Let's give a round of applause. This concludes the League of Women Voters, Batavia Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum for county positions on September 9th. We will be back tomorrow night for candidates running for the office of Circuit Clerk, 16th Judicial District, and Kane County Board Chair. So we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow, and thank you very much for participating. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good job, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, elbow maybe.